are live right now. Okay, good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education via teleconference of the Moore Park Unified School District, Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. And we are reconvening the meeting to open session and recognize the presence of a board quorum and indicate that no reportable action was taken in closed session. This meeting will be held via teleconference in accordance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N25-20 and the Ventura County Public Health Stay-at-Home Order. Members of the public have the right to observe the meeting using the link provided on the notice of teleconference meeting that was posted on September 18th, 2020. All right, call to order and the roll. Call to order at 5:34 p.m. And Aurelia, will you call the roll?
Yes, Scott Dettori,
Here.
Jeff Donabedian,
Here.
Robert Perez,
Here.
Nathan Sweet,
Here.
Ute Van Dam.
Present.
Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance. We all stand. Place your right hand over your heart.
Flag,
United States
United States of America,
to the republic,
to the republic,
and
which stands,
one nation,
one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you very much. Item number 6 is reordering and approval of the agenda. I have a motion. Do we need to reorder the agenda at all?
No, we don't.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll
Second.
second.
On a motion from Jeff Donabedian, seconded by Ute Van Dam. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 5-0. Approval of the minutes. It's recommended that the minutes of the September 8th, 2020 special meeting be approved by the board.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Okay. A motion by Robert Perez, seconded by Scott Dettori. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 5-0. Public comment. In accordance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N25-20 regarding the COVID-19 virus and the notice of the meeting teleconference posted on September 18th, 2020, members of the public may submit their comments electronically to the board secretary at ahernandez@mrpk.org prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting, September 22nd, 2020. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the board president may increase or decrease the time allowed. Due to the electronic nature of this meeting and to maintain the integrity of providing an opportunity for public comment, every effort will be made to read your comment into the record. Aurelia, are you reading me? We have, how many public comments do we have?
43.
Okay,
I'm going to start and then Ute's going to follow.
okay, thank you.
Okay. This one is from the TK and K teams at Mountain Meadow School, and it's from Deanna Resnick, Anna Rodriguez, Ashley Maxey, and Melinda Scheller. Dear board members, it goes without saying teachers miss their students. After all, it's the main reason we were drawn to this profession. Interfacing with students on a daily basis, directly impacting young minds, budding artists, and future scientists is the best part of our job. Do we want to be at school with our students? Absolutely. Do we want to rush our return to campus without detailed knowledge of specific role in following health protocols while balancing teaching with ensuring our students' health and safety, all without jeopardizing our own health? Absolutely not. There are too many what-if scenarios. Details are murky about who is responsible for added jobs such as temperature taking, sanitizing, and cleaning bathrooms between student use. What are we as teachers ultimately responsible for? These questions, coupled with the physical logistics of sharing a campus, all while maintaining safe distances, are on our minds. Teachers were surveyed and asked if we felt safe returning to school to teach. We imagine if the survey had asked if we felt safe returning on October 5th, answers would have been drastically different. Maybe if we had been asked, what will it take to help you feel safe and ready to return to the classroom with students, you would have the insight of those most directly impacted, your teachers. Given a chance to share our personal concerns, grade level concerns, or site concerns would have added another dimension to the deliberation. We were not asked. Would we feel safer? It is hard to know. At least we would have felt heard. Do we feel safe? Do we feel informed, prepared, or confident with the protocols and procedures? What are the protocols and procedures? We'd love to know. All of these questions are equally important, and without these answers, the word safe becomes one-dimensional. This is not a yes or no question. Feeling personally safe as a teacher and ensuring the safety of our students are two completely different concerns, both of equal importance. It is hard to quantify safety when we don't truly know what it will take to keep our students and ourselves safe and healthy upon the students' return. Another reason not to rush our return to campus is to make sure once we are back, we get to stay back. If our return to campus is pushed prematurely, we run the risk of switching back and forth from in-person to distance learning each time there is a spike or increase in the data that is driving such decisions. The irony is not lost on us that the school board will be holding a virtual meeting to decide if we can return to the classrooms in person. Connectivity is limited to the strength and reliability of an internet connection instead of interpersonal communication between students and teachers. The collective energy students typically bring to our classrooms fails to materialize quite the same way on a 13-inch computer screen. Subtle nuances go unnoticed, and students deeply want to connect to other squares on their screens. We spend our own money, we show up early and stay well beyond our contract hours. We participate in training on our own time and often work on the weekends. Please don't ask us to risk our health to have classrooms open to students by a date that is arbitrary and not completely and thoroughly thought out. Your students deserve as much, and so do your educators. Respectfully submitted. This is from Vicki Kale. I am currently a teacher at Moore Park High School. I am writing this letter to voice my concerns and the concerns of many teachers I have spoken with at our site regarding the board's efforts to reopen with either blended or face-to-face learning during this pandemic before a viable vaccine for COVID-19 has been created. If the board decides we will do this, I think there are both questions that need to be answered and realities to consider. I know there are great plans in place for mitigating the spread of this virus with distancing, hygiene practices, controlling traffic flow, disinfecting, etc. But I have not heard what options are being considered for teachers and staff, to say nothing of students who are at high risk for exposure. The push to get back to normal might be what we ultimately want, but will it be at the cost of health of our students and our teachers? As a high-risk person, I feel my only option is a leave of absence if I do not want to be a guinea pig for what many view as premature and ill-advised decisions. According to the state guidelines for ensuring teacher and staff safety during reopening, schools are asked to support high-risk employees by offering other options. See the CDPH website and the Cal OSHA guidelines. By providing options such as telework where appropriate, or teaching in a virtual learning or independent study context. Are you considering these options? What about high-risk students? Another issue of concern is the additional disruption to education for our students. We have spent and are currently spending a great deal of time and energy learning and teaching our students how to navigate Canvas and access our great curriculum. If we continue with online education, at least through the entire first semester, we just might get really good at it, assuming we are not asked to learn yet another new and improved platform. If we return to the class sites, there will be another new set of protocols and procedures for each of the students' physical classrooms, which they will have to learn, further slowing down the teaching of content, as well as potentially several of their teachers having to go on leave. So new class rules, new teachers, new school protocols, these all take additional time away from student learning. And what if we have a rash of cases which could shut down the school? I know that I am just now feeling we are getting up to speed with the class content. I still am having daily tutorials for students for how to access online stuff and submit work for my classes. These are good skills to know, and they will certainly benefit from learning this, but teachers need to be allowed to focus our energies on teaching our content. Please do not disregard the voices of the people who are working so hard to continue to provide quality education. Thank you for the opportunity to share. This is from Stephanie Guerrero, first grade teacher, Walnut Canyon. My name is Stephanie Guerrero. I'm a first grade teacher at Walnut Canyon School. I feel compelled to write to you regarding your decision to return to in-person learning and the negative impact that I feel it will have on all who attend or work at Walnut Canyon. I have been a teacher for 24 years. I have been at Walnut Canyon for 22 of those years. I love my job. I love my students. I am terrified at the thought of returning to school in person. I know that you have voted to have students return. I do not feel that this is a good idea. Dr. Fauci has said that we are still in the very first wave of the coronavirus. Flu and cold seasons are fast approaching, and with COVID, this, I feel, is a potential disaster looming on the horizon for us all. Substitute teachers are scarce in a normal year, and I am extremely concerned that we will not have enough subs to come into school to cover for a teacher who is ill. In the past, teachers have had to take on additional students when there were not enough subs available. This is not a normal year. We can't take on additional students. Does Moorpark Unified have enough funds available to purchase and supply enough PPE for students? I have a student who goes to a camp for his distance learning. He frequently does not have a mask. Will you ensure that students have adequate protection? I am extremely worried that my students or I will get sick. I have had to make arrangements to quarantine myself or my family. This is something that terrifies me and keeps me awake at night. I know that you feel students need to be back at school, but have you considered that what they could be exposed to far outweighs the positives? Our classrooms are nothing like they were a year ago. They are cold and sterile. I would like to respectfully request that you reconsider having elementary students return to campus right now. I do not feel that this is the best time for a return. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter. This is from Kim Lemons. Dear school board members, I write to you with concerns not necessarily about returning to the classroom, but about what the classroom will look like once we return. I feel the BCPH is far more qualified than you or I to make the decision of when we return. However, in the best interest of my students, I must argue for how we will return. I teach, in my opinion, one of the greatest populations of students on our campus, the English learners. It is my greatest pleasure to teach these classes and be able to guide them, support them, and encourage them on a daily basis to do everything they can to be successful and to help them find that success. Their needs are often unique in a typical classroom setting, and the majority of their learning is dependent on collaboration and communication. I must be able to closely interact with them as their teacher and to help guide them towards using the best academic language and proper techniques. They need to collaborate and work together to strengthen their verbal, reading, and writing skills. The best way for them to improve and perfect their English skills is through practice and through collaborative movement and community. They are each other's greatest supporters and allies, and within the room, there is not just one teacher, but as many teachers as there are learners. In a COVID-19 classroom, there will be no opportunity for collaboration and no opportunity for movement and group work. They cannot share together, laugh together, work together, or help each other improve their skills. They must stay 6 feet apart and they must wear a mask, blocking the ability to easily communicate and converse with each other. My students are often shy about speaking or presenting out loud, out of fear or embarrassment over their inability to speak perfect English. Adding a mask to their situation will harm them in so many ways and cause them to backslide. All of the progress made with my ELD classes last year will be lost once they find it is difficult to communicate with their peers and their teachers. For many of my English learners, my classroom is their safe space on campus. It is a place where they are not intimidated by fluent English speakers, and they are all working toward a common goal. They are not only friends but each other's family. While at home, they have been socially distancing from their families, yet this will be enforced in the classroom. They have family gatherings where they are not wearing masks, yet I will ask them to comply with the school rule. I cringe at the thought of spending half of my instructional time asking them to move away from each other, put their mask on, not walk too close to another student's desk, don't talk to their friends, don't touch anything that isn't their own personal belongings, don't socialize or interact in a class that not only thrives on their interaction, but depends on it in order to find success. In order for my students to come back and be successful, we need to come back to a climate that allows them to learn in the best way possible and using the best teaching and learning strategies for their needs. The current waiver allowed classroom settings is not what is best for students, and it is not what is best for the teachers. I ask you to please reconsider the students who need education and their teachers' support and guidance the most when you make decisions for our district. They depend on me, and I depend on you to make the right choices. Respectfully yours, Kim Lemons. This next one is from Fran Burdette. Dear school board members and MUSD administration, as I write this email, I have yet to see any data that backs up your apparent urge to get back to in-person teaching and learning. The headlines today say that there is a huge spike in COVID-19 cases at colleges that have started in-person classes. I just turned 65 and have several health issues that make me feel vulnerable to the ravages of this virus. If we go back to in-person learning before it is safe, I feel I will have to get my affairs in order to minimize the burden on my surviving family members. I hope you think ahead and have a plan in place for the loss of teachers and students if we go back to in-person classes prematurely. What is acceptable to you? Sincerely, Fran Burdette. This is from Trina Harvo, Moorpark High School. Dear board members, as a teacher with the Moorpark Unified School District since 1992, I would like to state for the record that I am looking forward to returning to face-to-face instruction. I'm looking forward to seeing my students, engaging with my students, and spending lunchtime facilitating club meetings with my students. That being said, I'm looking forward to a time where providing face-to-face instruction will be safe for our students, our community, and our families. It is your responsibility as leaders to act in the best interest of our community. Today, we must make the health and safety of others our priority. It is your responsibility to analyze the data, to observe the consequences of returning to face-to-face instruction prematurely, and to support your teachers and their families. I am asking that we do not rush into opening for political reasons, for childcare, or for the inconvenience of distance learning. I ask that we act conservatively and responsibly as we move forward. I cannot help but identify the hypocrisy of a virtual board meeting being held to determine the return to face-to-face instruction, thereby protecting the health and safety of our board. I look forward to returning to the classroom when we can provide a safe environment. Until then, we know better. Social distancing is difficult for children, and we have a responsibility to our community. This one is from Samantha Frias, members of the Board of Education. I am a veteran teacher in Moorpark Unified and currently teach second grade at Arroyo West. When I heard that the waiver was moving forward after knowing 70% of our elementary teachers felt unsafe to return, I was initially angry. My voice wasn't heard. Disappointment soon followed, and now I am scared. We have not been off the watch list for 2 weeks. There is no vaccine, and mask wearing is a political decision for some people. We are not able to dine in at our favorite restaurants or shop at malls, and yet a decision has been made to push a waiver forward to have children return to school. Children will be spaced 6 feet apart in the classroom and will do assignments seated at their desks. I have one door that opens to the outside. There is no cross circulation. I will not be able to walk around and check on students' progress as I once did, or have them see my facial expression or utilize shared manipulatives to optimize pedagogy. It will be distance learning and confined quarters. It seems more psychologically damaging to have children so close to their friends, teachers, and outside playground, and yet not be able to interact or play as they once did. There will be 12 children in my morning class and 12 in my afternoon class. They are exposed to 12 variables, not including the web that each student's life exposes them to. I am exposed to 24 variables and those associated webs. Those webs include family members and work environments and personal choices to wear a mask or socialize with outside family members and friends. There have been many hours that have been spent beyond the regular workday to learn our LMS, learning management system. I continue to invest many outside hours to do a job that I once did in half the time and in person. It has not been easy, but it's been necessary. I would love to be back with the children in the classroom. I also understand and have seen via Google Meets how challenging distance learning can be for the students and parents. Parents are trying to work from home or have had to stop working to supervise and care for their kids. Children miss socialization and connection. None of this is ideal. We all want things to be the way they were, but these are sacrifices that we are making to ensure my safety, my family's safety, my students' safety, and that of their families. It would be far easier for me to teach as I once did. There have been days in the summer, on the weekends, and late at night when I am linking assignments or creating modules and pages to share with the children. I do it because it's safe and because the children deserve an education. Right now, they can see my facial expressions. They are not taunted by what used to be or what they can't do now. I am not comforted to know that a district nurse can show me how to properly wear a mask in class, or how to take a temperature, or how to encourage hand washing. There are too many unknowns. Yes, we know more than we did in March, but the far-reaching after effects are still coming to light. Why are some people affected more than others? Not all of those affected are older. Not everyone affected has comorbidities. Let's not be too quick to embark on this next step in education, only to have to pull back and do distance learning again, and worse, have someone get sick or die. Please err on the side of caution here. Let's do what is safest and prudent and return when we can be sure it's sustainable. Show us you care about the teachers. Okay, this one is from Debbie Floyd, Campus Canyon Transitional Kindergarten Teacher, Genevieve James, Campus Canyon 3rd grade, Allison Day, Campus Canyon 1st grade, Terry Freifeld, Campus Canyon 3rd grade. Dear members of the Moorpark School Board, thank you for the time you have taken to plan for reopening our schools. I am writing to you today as both a teacher and parent in the Moorpark School District. Ideally, my family and I would love for all students to return to school and some sense of normalcy. However, in my role as teacher and parent, I do not feel that this is the time to do so. First, I understand and appreciate the concept of cohorts to limit contacts, but I am concerned about the risk of exposure to COVID-19 for my family and all families. Just to start, my family is exposed to 3 cohorts of students, my 2 cohorts and the one my daughter attends. We are also exposed to all of the cohorts of all of the siblings of those students. Then there are the students who attend daycare, camps, or sports on or off campus. The contact seems to add up exponentially. I am also concerned as a teacher of transitional kindergarten that our youngest learners are not well practiced in covering coughs and sneezes or blowing noses independently. The board discussed that the number of cases in our county is heavily impacted by jails and residential care facilities. The county has banned trick-or-treating and indoor restaurant dining as well. I'm not sure I see a distinction between these settings and having 15 people in a classroom for 2.5 hours daily. As for the social emotional impact of returning to school, I wonder if parents who are in favor of returning really understand what it's going to look like. I will have 4- and 5-year-old students sitting at desks. Keeping young students physically distanced will be extremely challenging, especially when having to walk in lines. They will not get the opportunities to participate in cooperative play and learning as they should. They will not be able to learn to share. They will not be allowed to play on the playground structures or share playground equipment. They will have to bring all materials and supplies to school and back home again each day. It was stated at the last board meeting that if one student in a cohort tests positive, the entire cohort will be sent home. Doesn't the teacher then need to quarantine as well? Then the other cohort for that teacher also will have to be sent home, as the teacher will need to work from home. The thought of constantly moving back and forth between blended learning and distance learning seems disruptive and exhausting. What would be the emotional cost of this upheaval to students, families, and teachers? According to the Ventura County Recovers website, more than 75% of children who have died of COVID-19 in the U.S. are minorities, though they account for just 41% of the overall youth population, according to the CDC. How is that reflected in our Title I schools in Moorpark? I understand that applying for the waiver does not mean we are required to resume in-person instruction. I hope that you will reconsider opening schools now for the safety and well-being of all students, families, and school employees. This is from Anne Marie Brummond, 2nd grade teacher at Walnut Canyon. The waiver and an analogy. Informed decisions are always based on fact. Looking back at history and interviewing those who live day in and day out with the process that is being examined. A prime example is the Space Shuttle Challenger, an example of not listening to the scientist and the data that was meticulously tracked. They were screaming that a catastrophic disaster was about to happen, that they gave in to the politics, pushed the limits one more time, and signed a waiver to allow the space shuttle to launch despite the risk analysis. 7 lives were lost. Could we live with just one serious illness, God forbid a death, caused by our impatience while waiting for the all-clear signal for a safer opening? The scientists knew then, and they know now. History, science, data. Please consider these over the pressure of the impatient voices that are ringing in your ears. As a teacher, I know the cycle of germs in an average year. Classrooms are petri dishes in the best of circumstances. Please wait, no regrets on our watch. And then this one is from Jen Silva. Dear school board members, I am writing to ask you to reconsider your decision to send MUSD students and teachers back to in-person classes. You saw the survey results from the staff at the last board meeting, and the majority of teachers said they did not feel comfortable going back to the physical classroom. The staff from the schools need to be a part of this decision-making process, as we are the people on the front lines. It is very difficult for many of us to understand how these decisions are being made via Zoom meetings. If it is not safe for the school board to meet in person, yet how can we expect it to meet with students in person? Also, what will we go back to in the blended model won't be anything like normal school was prior to COVID. Students will have to wear masks and stay 6 feet apart. We won't be able to have them collaborate in groups, and they will have to learn from a teacher who is wearing a mask. I think we can all agree that keeping children socially distant from one another can be a challenge for students in all age groups. I respectfully ask that you wait and make these decisions once you are all able to meet safely in person, and once the conditions to return to in-person learning would be closer to the normal we all are accustomed to. I know many of you and your families personally. I grew up in this town. I myself am proud to be a product of MUSD schools. I hope you know how much I love this town and how much I love being a teacher here. I hope you know I truly want to be back in the classroom with my students. I miss them and care about them deeply. However, I don't want to rush into that decision before it is truly safe to do so. Thank you for your time. Okay, Ute?
All right, here we go. I have quite a stack, so I'll try to read quickly. This is from Terry Cordero. Dear Moore Park School Board members, I'd like to share my family's personal story with COVID-19. Attached is a picture of my brother, Billy. He has special needs. He lives in a boarding care facility. His house contains 5 residents and 3 revolving staff. He has not been allowed out of the house since mid-March. In late April, he contracted COVID. He has been housebound, yet he still contracted the virus. Billy spent 3 months in the hospital. This is a picture of him in the hospital on his birthday. Thankfully, he has recovered from COVID. However, he has been left in a weakened state, can no longer walk on his own, in a wheelchair. As a result, he can no longer walk to the restroom and now has to use diapers. This has been a life-changing illness for my brother, who already have so many daily challenges. COVID is real and obviously very contagious. That's why I have such a strong aversion to being placed in the classroom with children at this time. Thank you for reading my letter. This one is from Campus Canyon teachers, Terry Cordero, Ali McManama, Gina Casagrande, Debbie Cherry, Preeti Shaw, Nicole Cameron, Barbara D. Agati, Anita Brock, and Patricia Losinski. Your school board members, you are elected officials. You voted in with the exception that you were voted in with the expectation that you would make decisions that would at best be in the best interest of students, staff, and teachers. While Ventura County is still on the watch list, you have made a cruel and careless decision to send us back in-person schooling. While you get to remain in your virtual world, we are getting sent into an environment where we will be close contact with 24 children over a 5-hour period day. Which will indirectly expose us to their family members and everyone else who they've been exposed to. Your reckless decision petrifies us. We do not have the luxury of taking a leave of absences. Our families rely on our incomes as well as our insurance benefits. Know that there is a chance of severe illness and even death occurring because of your decision. When this does happen, I ask you to save your empty condolences to our family. You know full well that the risks are in sending us back to school. We are not interested in being a part of your experiment, but we have no choice. We're sure that you are hoping for the best result. Fingers crossed that this does not become a regrettable decision on your part. You are intelligent people, and you must know that without a vaccine, the only way that COVID numbers will go down and stay down is to continue social distancing and wearing masks. Moore Park is a small community. We ask that prior to finalizing your decision, you walk each and every campus to review the logistics of your environment. Imagine what is truly involved in properly sanitizing each classroom in the allotted time, and ponder the likelihood that we will actually be able to keep kids separated in a manner that is safe. The bathroom issue alone makes that impossible. We desperately love and miss our students. We look forward to the day when we can be together, but it must be safe for all of us. Please know that you are welcome and encouraged to spend time with us in our classroom and with our students so that you can witness firsthand the situation in which you have placed us. When the school board members are up for re-election, we will make sure our vote for candidates who value and protect the lives of students and teachers whom they represent. This one is from Scott Easley. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm replying to your last email I sent to you on July 17th in conjunction with the news that the board voted in favor of applying for a waiver to push back the classroom earlier, even though we have not met the state mandated requirements in Ventura County. I'd like to refer to the aforementioned email and go on record to state that I still believing the following numbered items in the letter are completely valid to date: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, and 13. I did not refer to points 1 and 10 because I don't have the correct current data and our numbers as I'm writing this email. Unfortunately, most of us just found out during class today that the letter must be submitted by tonight in order to go on public record, so I'm an extreme time crunch. Adding to these points referenced in my original email, I'm highly opposed to the waiver for these extra reasons as well. My wife is a second grade teacher in the district. Currently, the state policy for K-2 is that masks are optional. That's absolutely absurd. That literally invites K-2 teachers to contract the virus based on hygiene practices I referred to in July. This came up very briefly in one of my points, but now it's ever so critical. We do not have a proven vaccine for COVID. Why are we willing to push into a situation earlier on top when we have no vaccine? Watching the news since March, it's clear how COVID hotspots can pop up quickly anywhere. Has the board researched other schools that have opened across the country to learn more about successes and failures? If so, will the board share that information with the public? Does the research represent a big enough sample size to get a clear picture of the risks and failures that other schools have suffered so far, even though they took precautions? Next point, is the board willing to put the educating MUSD workforce at risk contracting the virus because they want to start earlier than the state mandate, especially when over 70% of the elementary teachers in recent survey said they felt uncomfortable and the current safety issues? Teachers are our front line. Teachers are the ones who are truly at risk. Kids don't get as ill as adults, but they spread the virus. Teachers and their families are being put directly in harm's way, especially considering that we all are in closed area for 5 hours a day with 2 sets of kids without knowledge of a viable vaccine, 5 hours a day in an enclosed environment. There are other points I can make, but my main goal is to tell you that I'm highly opposed to a waiver for MUSD. Again, please refer to the earlier email I sent to you in July because I'm assuming it was received and read by all, even though I only received confirmation from one board member that it was received. Thank you for your time. And this is the email, July 17th, 2020. Good afternoon, board members. I'll keep it as brief as possible given this sensitive timeline, but I'm writing to you on behalf of myself as a veteran teacher of MUSD, as well as on behalf of a large majority of staff members at my school. If there is a CC'd staff members who does not support these comments, please respond to the board to let them know you are of a different opinion. Based on our current climate, professional experience, and ever-changing data, we strongly encourage that MUSD reopens remotely for the fall of 2020 for the following reasons. 1, COVID numbers in California have skyrocketed. 2, the reality of all schools is that they are very much of a petri dish with safeguards or without. Everyone knows that universally. We are also seeing that adults in this COVID environment have especially difficulty practicing proper hygiene and social distancing, as noted in our spike of COVID numbers. So how are kids expected to do a better job than their adults at home role models, since we also know that there's ultimate outcome of most students year in and year out, and it has a lot to do with their home environment. Knowing that classrooms are where kids and teachers have universally built up the immunities based on the nature of having kids in close quarters, it must be noted that the general populace does not truly grasp the impossibility of keeping germs and viruses out of school, even with safety measures. They say they do, but in reality, they do not understand the task of keeping kids and teachers from infection. Couple that with the fact that there is no current viable vaccine. 3, parents and adult family members who do not strictly abide by hygiene and social distancing regulations put the child's peers at risk, as well as their peers' families, the teachers involved and those teachers' families. Everyone and everything that a child is exposed to from their families, various contacts, schools, work, relatives, friends, etc., is brought to the classroom at a day and age when we do not have a proven vaccine. Has the general populace ever witnessed the daily interaction let's see, 4, has the general populace ever witnessed the daily interactions of children in class with a constant need to rub their noses, touch their faces, shift their glasses, cough, sneeze, and be in a closer proximity to others out of sheer nature, even knowing that they need to stay separate? 5, younger students TK through second especially need proximal comfort when they are upset, which cannot be provided during a time when safety measures against COVID are unclear. 6, so many parents knowingly send their kids to school sick for a variety of reasons. That will not change. 7, are we prepared to have teachers and students quarantined, as well as families of those students and teachers who are quarantined? What does that do to education of those students involved? 8, are we prepared to have willing, capable substitutes take over the class of learners in this environment, especially if there's a lower compensation they receive? 9, are people considering the side effects and the aftermath of those who are very affected by the virus? The average age of teachers in California puts many of our educators at risk. Have you read the current data regarding the long-term effects that recovered patients are experiencing? 10, today, The Hill published that nearly 1,000 people have tested positive for the coronavirus at California daycare facilities. Recently, 1/3 of the kids tested in Florida tested positive for COVID. The virus is changing and mutating in ways that were unexpected, and it's being shown that younger kids are being affected more readily. We currently do not have enough information about the rate at which children transmit the virus to others. 11, are we okay with still having Zoom meetings for adults, but we are okay with putting kids and teachers into the same classroom for hours at a time? 12, California teachers shut down when we had less cases in the state. Now that we have more cases and no headway on containment, why are we considering reopening in class? 13, are we putting our Moore Park school community into a situation where we'll most likely have to declare, quote, we thought it was okay until it wasn't, end quote. Isn't it that where the entire state of California is right now? We thought we were doing okay until we weren't. These are only some of the points that we make regarding the remote start to 2020. I'd be happy to follow up on other points and provide specific data, but I'd like to send this initial email based on the timeline for decisions being made. Despite the pressures you may receive from families, businesses, and the state, please keep in mind that the students and teachers will be directly on the front line of the virus that has not been contained if we open in class. The infected school population would be devastating social and economic ripple effect on our community greater than what we're seeing now, and it's not worth the risk, a time when we're unable to provide acceptable guarantees to a safety of our community at large, when being that there is no viable vaccine. Please strongly consider reopening remotely for the 2020 school year. Thank you very much. Okay, next one is from Dana Heffernan. Dear Board of Trustees, I'm writing to express my concern regarding the return of in-person teaching for K-5 students. I'd like to know what protections I'm going to have when students return to school. As essential workers, we need to be provided with the essential equipment to give us protection from the virus. We know that students frequently are sent to school sick. This has already happened this year when a child came to school for an assessment with a fever 101. That child was sent home, but we know this will occur again on a regular basis. I saw a letter that Dr. Leisure stated that Dr. Leisure will provide us with a mask. What kind of mask? Is it N95? The mask I received today was very thin and of poor quality. I would not use it around students. I also feel teachers' workstations should be supplied with plexiglass shields to provide additional protection for teachers. I need to protect myself and my family, all our hardworking staff, students, and families, and our students. Your decision not only puts my life at risk, but all of my family's life too. In a previous conversation with employees, it was mentioned that teachers would have to take temperatures of the students. I am adamant that this is not my responsibility to take temperatures. By the time I get to my room, I've already passed through too many hallways and crossed paths with too many students. Temperatures should be taken before the student leaves their parent's car. That way the student is never on campus, preventing exposures to all students. This will also save time, and students would not have to wait for parents to return to pick up their sick kids. Board of Education should also inform parents that the return to school is not going to be the same. Students will be socializing on the playground. They will have to sit 6 feet away from each other on the classroom. They won't be allowed to wander around the room. The students will need to stay in their seats for the duration of the class time. For some students, it'll be very difficult. Parents will need to make sure students bring their supplies to school every day, including their Chromebook. Chromebooks will need to be charged each night so they are ready to use. Since we no longer have any computers in our classrooms, there are no spare Chromebooks or laptops available for student use. As a teacher in the district for 21 years, I know that the district expects each teacher to buy their own stuff. This is one of those times when the district needs to finally step up and supply all teachers and staff with the proper quality protective equipment to keep us safe in the classroom. I'm fearful of returning to the classroom because I don't expect to receive needed protective equipment to keep us all safe. Maybe if our district actually cared about our staff and provided us with the necessary equipment to protect us, more teachers would be in favor of returning to the classroom. I'm so worried and stressed about this situation. I know it is affecting my overall health. I certainly hope you consider how this is affecting the overall health and morale of the entire elementary teaching staff. We need to wait until COVID numbers indicate that it is safe for us to return of all members of MUSD, including middle school and high school staff and students. All right, the next one is from Flory, Julia Weinrot, Stacy Derringer, and Victoria Laney. Dear Moore Park Unified School Board members, we are second grade teachers at Flory, writing to you to express our desire to return to in-person teaching as soon as possible. For that reason, we fully support the school board's decision to file a waiver with the county. While you previously shared letters from teachers who support discontinuing distance learning, we would like to provide you with the perspective of teachers who are eager to return to their classrooms. It has been a little over 6 months since the last day we spent in our classrooms with students physically present. When COVID hit, students, parents, and teachers had to quickly transition from distance learning. At that point, there was a shift in the air. People began realizing how essential schools are to the society. Not only do schools provide children with the academic instruction they need to become working, contributing members of our society, but schools provide many students with a place where they can feel safe, comfortable, and fed. Students come to us from all different backgrounds with different abilities, opportunities, and needs. While one student may have a large home with excellent Wi-Fi, another may be in a one-bedroom apartment with 6 people all sharing the same internet connection. While one student may come from a family of emotional stability, another may come from a broken home. While one student may come from a home with a college-educated parent who can support them in learning the basic concepts of their grade level, another student may come from a home without academic support. It is our duty as educators to provide an equal opportunity education to all students, regardless of their background, and distance learning does not allow for this. If anything, distance learning has only accentuated the disparities among our diverse population of students. Over the last 6 months, thousands of people have stepped up to the plate and continued their essential duties. Many of us have gone to a Starbucks to purchase a quality latte for our essential barista. Many of us have gone to get our hair dyed and cut by essential stylists. We have a hard time accepting that those of us responsible for educating our children are not considered essential. In more recent times, we have seen their role of teachers have played in their students' lives during times of crisis and need. Teachers across the country have been called upon to protect their students during active shooter situations. Teachers have always pledged to protect their students in the case of a fire or earthquake. While these situations are hard to predict, we're lucky to know enough about COVID to take precautions. We have been gratefully watching hand washing stations being installed throughout our campuses, and our incredible custodians can be seen regularly cleaning doorknobs and handles. We have watched distancing dots being placed on the ground and have seen excess furniture removed to make way for a safe classroom distancing. Although there are many uncertainties about COVID, there is also many safety measures that can be taken to protect all those who return to the classroom. The social, emotional, and academic needs of our students can be better met face-to-face, especially at an elementary school level. Now is a crucial time for any of our teachers to be able to support their students. While we understand and respect the concerns many teachers have expressed about return to in-person learning, it is also important to note that teachers were given the opportunity to voice their concerns. There were many distance learning positions available, and choosing blended learning came with the understanding that there would be an eventual return to the classroom. Prolonging the return to school does nothing but further to add to the stress that all those affected by the situation are feeling. Although we do not believe there is an easy answer to the uncertainties we are all facing, we do believe that distance learning was only meant to be temporary fix to a problem that has no definite end in sight. As soon as the county officials deem it safe, our students need to return to their classroom for their own long-term well-being, and teachers need to be able to teach the way they were always meant to teach, in their classrooms, their homes away from home. I need a quick drink, sorry. All right, this one is from MEA Executive Board, Ellen Bailey, Brian Freifeld, Eusebia Grajada, Kim Lemons, Lisa McCarter, Diane McIntosh, Rosanna Meisterling, and Kristen Swenson. Dear MUSD Board of Trustees, the MEA Executive Board understands the multiple pressures that you face in the attempt to respond to all segments of MUSD community. As elected representatives for our community's public schools, you have been entrusted with providing leadership for children, the school district, and all of its employees. This is a tough week, even when we're not serving in office during the pandemic. On September 15th, 2020, the county still is on the state's watch list during the virtual meeting, and on a day in which 1,400 Americans died from COVID, you decided to initiate a process that will return Moorpark's children and to their teachers in their respective campuses for in-person learning. A crucial element of leadership is setting the direction, otherwise known as vision. The intent of this letter is to help you see the learning matrix you have authorized. MEA's executive board asks you to envision what school would be like for children ages 4 through 11 if you initiated blended learning in K to 5 on October 9th. Teachers and students will meet one another for the first time behind masks. Students and teachers' movements will be limited and scripted. Children will walk in and out of buildings in a singular directions. Kids will be confined to desks. Learning will still take place via computer. Student-teacher interactions will be for 2.5 hours and from behind masks and barriers. Teachers will not be able to walk the room and give individualized instruction. There will be no lunch. There will be no recess. They can only look at the swings and the playground equipment, not use them. There will be no interacting with peers from any other class or cohort. There will be no centers, no group work, no sharing of items such as manipulatives or class supplies. There will be no field trips or no class celebrations. Teachers cannot comfort a scared or crying student who would otherwise receive a hug. Teachers cannot console a student who clings to their parents or help move them from their parents. Teachers will not be able to wipe noses or help with protective devices. Students and peers and teachers with links to COVID will be isolated if not quarantined. Parents will not be allowed to volunteer. The amount of time it will take for students to wash their hands before entering the classroom while they socially stand 6 feet apart will create a line that's 72 to 90 feet long and will take away from valuable instruction time. Every stakeholder wants kids back in school where they belong. A heavy majority, 70% of TK through 5 teachers told you that returning at this point is a bad idea because they did not think the conditions are safe enough for return. While we cannot be certain when it's the right time to return to our campuses, we do know that you disregarded many teacher concerns and opinions prior to making your unanimous vote. An equal number of teachers believe that blended learning may be inferior to distance learning. They asked you this hybrid model really better. They asked, is this hybrid model really better for a young child's academic, emotional, and social development? They think that its exhaustive list of restrictions indicates that return to campus may be traumatic for kids in their care. Another reason why teachers objected is that they felt that they and their students just started to get the rhythm from a distance. Your decision to further disrupt this learning process, what one teacher calls the yo-yo effect. Are you prepared for the scenario that shuts down schools again and sends them back to distance learning? Blended schooling will take place as the specter of COVID haunts every masked breath. MEA leadership asked, do the merits of opening schools while it is not safe enough to eat indoors or conduct in-person school board meetings in Ventura County outweighs the cost if a child or a teacher gets sick? You made your decision, you own it. MEA leadership must trust that state, county, and local officers possess the knowledge, will, and judgment to exercise the powers that they have been granted. MEA leadership believes that most of our trustees do. With this authority, however, comes responsibility. MEA leadership will hold the Moorpark Unified School District trustees accountable for your September 15th vote. We strongly encourage you to journey beyond that confines of the school board chamber or in your homes to monitor the working conditions that you mandate, and in the interlude between your plan and its activation, that you foresee the possible consequences that your decision has created. All right, the next one. Several pages. It's by Janine Alexander, Zosia Blair, Melissa Clerk, Leslie Burns, Peter Daland, Fran Fredette, Trina Harvout, Sam Hughes, Lauren Johnson, Jessica Jones, Sharon Conish, Smadar Marshall, Emily Piper, Megan Razor, Kara Tedrick, Rob Walden, Ron Wilford. Dear MUSD Board, in light of the current debate about returning to schools in person, the safety of doing so, the burden of the parents, the quality of the education, the risks to teachers and students, there are a number of things to consider. As a teacher, we have specific As teachers, we have some specific questions that we would like to pose to the board and ideally have answers before a plan to return to school is set in motion. These are the questions are listed as follows. Concerning logistics for learning. 1, at the high school level, we were promised small class sizes with cohorts of 12 students and 12 students and under. Many of us have numbers in our class that do not currently reflect this due to scheduling difficulties. If we go back to blended learning, how would the class sizes be adjusted specifically? Are we hiring more teachers? Are we receiving bigger spaces? Are schedules being redone mid-semesters? The current schedule is also quite imbalanced between AM, PM cohorts, which means some classrooms will have far more than 12 students at a time. Additionally, number 2, when schedules are created in the high school, making full distance learning sections proved to be difficult logistically, and they were scrapped. At the last check of the master calendar that was sent to MHS staff on 9/1, there was one pure DL class. The rest of the students were placed in hybrid classes. How will teachers be expected to account for the extreme difficulty of reaching these students when we return to hybrid learning? Additionally, DL students only have 15 minutes of dedicated time with their teacher built behind the hybrid schedule, which puts them at a significant disadvantage. Many high school teachers feel that we can do it digitally. And everyone on the same page, we can in the proposed blended model where we have split time or when we have to split our time, attention, and lesson plans between the students in front of us and the students at home. 3, the New York Times reported August 13th that more than 200 employees have been barred from work at Georgia's largest school district. High school in Indiana had to shift to online learning just in day 2. And students in Mississippi were forced to quarantine after classmates tested positive in the coronavirus the first week of classes. In addition to the health effect this would have on teachers and students who tested positive, there's also a staggering mental, physical, and financial cost to opening up only to be shut down again for days or weeks later. This is particularly concerning to teachers who must replan all of their lessons to a hybrid model, only to potentially have to do the work all over if distance learning is reinstated. Concerning safety, 1, last school board meeting, Dr. Hayes indicated COVID testing would be done via the COVID-free testing centers or through the testing provided by employees, healthcare providers. How often will teacher, staff, students be required to be tested? Is this at our expense or the district's? Will we have to spend additional time going to the testing center? If so, how often? What if the only available time to do so are during school hours? This is a disease that presents itself differently for different people, and consistent testing is needed. Simply waiting for symptoms to present is not safe working conditions. Dr. Hayes also noted that it takes many days, sometimes over a week, for results to come back, which is a potential week of exposure to others. Furthermore, how will we go about ensuring and enforcing these new policies? How will the schools determine whether or not students have been tested and how they will keep track of and release that information? What about substitute teachers? Will our pool of substitutes be only those who have tested negative? Will our pool already be less than we already are starting from? Number 2, when a teacher is forced to quarantine or become sick, according to our current MOU, those days come out of sick days. Will that continue to be the policy? There is a worry that teacher sick days will quickly dwindle as we move through the process. 3, in the unfortunate event that a teacher becomes permanently disabled from COVID, what compensation will they receive? If they die, what compensation will their families receive? This might seem dramatic, but in light of the Demetria Bannister, the 28-year-old third grade teacher in South Carolina who died last week, it feels like an important question to ask. Your teachers committed to educating our students, not to being on the front lines of the pandemic. Many of us have not seen family members or friends for months. We have not pursued our hobbies or interests. We have stayed home in an effort to stay safe, going back to school when our numbers are still high. There isn't a vaccine, and we are steadily moving towards the normal flu and cold season, predicted to burden our health services even more and making dual infection more likely, negates the last 7 months of our efforts to stay safe and decrease political devastation of the pandemic. Yes, Moore Park City numbers have been low, but how much of that is due to students and families quarantined? It is also important to remember that many of our teaching staff live outside the county limits of where coronavirus outbreaks have been worse. Many of our students are currently traveling or living in other areas. By bringing teachers, staff, and students, we are increasing the movement and interaction of people in and out of the city of Moore as well. In short, we feel that there's too many concerns, too many scary possibilities, and too many unanswered questions to pursue the path of reopening at this time. We urge the school board and the district to slow down and re-examine these questions prior to committing the path that we have a disastrous repercussions. Only once we have a solid and realistic plan for all should we open in-person classes. The next one is from Emily Piper. Dear community members, ladies and gentlemen of the school board, since the possibility of returning to in-person learning is being considered, I think it's important to consider all of the concerns and logistics that are a part of this process. If these questions are not thoroughly reviewed or satisfactorily answered, my safety and safety of my coworkers, families, and students has not been adequately considered before making this important decision. The questions are as follows. Student well-being. Will there be a full-time mental health counselor to work with students who are fearful or have lost loved ones due to coronavirus or who loved ones are ill? What will the consequences for students who do not follow protocols, mask distance, etc.? What will enforcement look like? What is required and what is not? Will students be forced to leave campus if they refuse to wear a mask? Where will they stay before they are picked up? Will students have temperature checks? Will teachers be required to do this? And how will that impact class time? Will students be required to receive COVID testing? How often? How will this be monitored or recorded? Teacher well-being. Will we be given gloves and hand sanitizer bottles? How often will we be tested for COVID? How will that be monitored and recorded? What if appointments are only available during school hours? Since masks protect others from mask wearers, is the district's position that teachers and staff do not need to be protected, but students who need to be protected from us? What social, emotional, psychological support and training can be offered to staff? Will we provide classrooms with amplification systems to help project our voices through masks and face shields? If teachers need to quarantine, will we teach from home? If we run out of sick days, what if we run out of sick days because of quarantine? If a student comes to school sick, what's the procedure? Last year, I was told not to send a sick child to the health office because it might be singled him out. Will that continue to be our policy? Administration and staff well-being. How will school lunches and dismissal be supervised? Will school be hiring more nurses, custodial staff, counselors? Will there be a nurse in the building all day, every day? If a staff member's responsibility is to provide a direct service to a student like counseling, and a student is not wearing a mask, can the provider refuse to meet with the student due to the concerns of their own safety and well-being? What if the related service is indicated at their IEP? Is this provider then being non-compliant? Will sign language interpreters be required to wear face masks? Facial expressions and mouth morphemes are a big part of ASL. Some students rely on lip reading and support their understanding of the language. High-touch surfaces. Who is responsible for cleaning high-touch surfaces in the classroom, and how often will they need to be cleaned? Will teachers be required to stop lessons in order to clean the item before it's used by another student? It's possible to have students be responsible for wiping their own desks and materials. Will we be providing disposable water bottles? Fountains are a high-touch area. Classrooms. Will a barrier between the teacher's desk and the rest of the classroom be provided? Will barriers between desks be provided? Will the floor be marked so the desks remain where they're supposed to be? We were originally told that our classroom would safely house 12 students. Then that number changed to 14. Why was that change made? Why is it more, which is more accurate? Desks are currently about 4 feet apart. Will they be moved so they're 6 feet apart? That will reduce the number of desks that will fit in each room. Will cohorts that are larger than 12 to 14 be arranged so we can house our students safely? Can we shift classes outdoors? Can we team up with other grade level teachers to teach from the auditorium? Bathrooms. How will bathrooms be cleaned? How will we know if the bathroom was recently cleaned? How will we monitor how many students are in the bathroom during class time or between class time? Hallways and passing periods. Will we have one hallway? No, I'm sorry. Will we have one-way hallways? Will there be a line dividing the hallways in two? Will we put up dividers? Will signs be in place every 6 feet? Will time between classes be increased so students can space themselves during passing periods? Instruction, assignments, and classroom management. Can we limit to online submission? Can we limit to online submissions only when we don't have to touch papers or take them home to grade? Will we be able to do our group projects or collaborative work? Will we have in-classroom computers so group assignments can be completed while maintaining social distancing? Can we require students to bring their computers to and from class? How can teachers provide nonverbal cues like a desk tap if maintaining social distance? If students pretend to cough, sneeze on others, how will it be handled on a disciplinary level? There are students with IEPs that require teachers to provide seatings close to the instructor or other non-socially distant methods of teaching. Will teachers be required to follow this, or will accommodations and modifications be rewritten before we need to return to in-classroom classes? Community supplies and library. Who will clean the supplies? How often will they be cleaned? Who will they be shared? How will they be shared? Will the library be closed, or should we implement a cap on the number of students able to enter at times like lunch and after school? Will we be required to disinfect any books that are returned? How will computer labs be disinfected, and who will disinfect them between class periods? Class sets of novels, how will these be distributed, collected, disinfected before going to the next teacher? HVAC. Will HVAC air quality specialists be brought in to assess the air quality and check for proper ventilation? Older schools are prone to air quality issues, and COVID is said to spread in poorly ventilated areas. Many of our rooms have little to no natural airflow. Can we open the windows? And we're advised not to open the doors while air conditioning is running. How will this be addressed? Air filters are being changed in their systems and at the appropriate times. Will they be upgraded? Drills. What will fire drills look like? How will we socially distance during those? What will lockdown drills look like? How will we get all students into a hard corner while social distancing? Liability. Will staff need to get a signed waiver to work? Will students sign a waiver protecting staff in the event a student gets sick while they're in their class? Will families need to sign a waiver of disclosure if they're being exposed? Who would that violate privacy laws? Will teachers be required to sign waivers promising not to hold the district school responsible if they get sick? If so, and if they refuse to sign, will they lose their job? Will staff or students have the right to opt out of COVID-19 testing or temperature checks? Will we be informed if this occurs? I recognize that this is a great deal of questions, and asking them may appear rude or aggressive. However, that is not my intention. Rather, I bring these questions to your attention because they have engrossed every staff member since we first were informed of the possibility of in-person education, and because they are paramount of our well-being. Until they are answered adequately, we simply cannot be assured that our health and safety have been truly considered. We should not return to in-person education, risking ourselves, our students, and the families in the process. This one is from Diane Ferry. Let's see. Dear MUSD school boards, I'm writing to you, this very concerned MUSD fifth grade teacher, as a mother who values every child's life. I've been a teacher for 30 years and started working for MUSD 17 years ago, and felt so proud and happy to come from a very large district to a small one because I felt so cared for and I was no longer just a number. I have to tell you that that feeling has just recently changed. I felt hopefully that the board would hear the teachers' voices and how most of us don't feel safe coming back into my classroom. No, I skipped a line, sorry. Coming back into our classrooms with students just yet. There's nothing that I want more than to come back to my classroom and be with my students. However, I do not want to risk anyone's health or life. My students' health is of utmost importance to me, as well as my colleagues' health too. Can you guarantee everyone's safety? I know if we come back too soon before it's truly safe that we will be taking a risk. I do not understand the rush, especially since distance learning is working. If we return October 5th, I see us losing valuable instruction time, having to spend time taking temperatures, washing hands, using barriers, etc. Please consider waiting on a return to the classroom until the numbers look better for our county. It is just not worth the risk. Even if one person from MUSD dies, that's not okay with me. Is it for you? I understand this is not an easy decision, but please take teachers' voices and concerns into consideration. 70% of us do not feel safe. How can you ignore the majority of teachers? Thank you for taking time to read my letter. And my last one is from, it says Flory teachers. It's Kathy Peters, Diane Ferry, Dawn Horsma, Beth Medina, Mandy Harden, Nicole Cheek, Jenny White, and Antonella Ragoza. Members of the Board of Education, my name is Kathy Peters and I teach third grade at Flory Academy. Since 1996, I have dedicated my life to children and family in Moore Park Unified School District. Since joining this district, I've always felt that they were so fortunate to have a family of professionals working together, teachers, staff, administrators, and you, the school board. I've always felt that all of our best interests were equally important until now. I, like the rest of our community, have long to have our students back at school, but I implore you to be wise and follow this often used phrase, patience is a virtue. By pushing forward with the waiver, you risk the health of teachers that you were elected to protect. Let's not be the district that, in hindsight, regrets the decision to push forward too quickly. You have heard from 70% of elementary teachers in the district who fear for their health and the health of children who are forced to return in the classroom before all necessary precautions are set into place. Okay, next up.
Okay, I have several here. The first one that I have is from Lynn Markham, teacher at Campus Canyon. To the Moore Park Unified School District Board. Tonight you are making the decision as to whether or not classrooms should be open for kindergarten through 5th grade students. I know that you do not do so without a great deal of thought. Please realize that so far, that is all you have been able to do: entertain thoughts and ideas, examine information and planning, delve through science and opinions. It has all been commingling into a thought experiment and driving you to the place where you feel the proper action is to decide when, how, if, and why schools should reopen their doors and resume instruction with students in the house. Your thought experiment has led you to action in the form of a decision. This decision is momentous, much like the military generals and presidents who must decide when it is time to send troops into the trenches. You are in the position of sending your educational troops into the schools. You are determining when the risk to life and health is outweighed by the need for intervention and instruction. We have been told that you are considering a date of October 5th for reopening. We have been assured that every precaution and safety protocol has been taken to ensure the safety of teachers and students. You are instructing those who lead us to maintain an environment which will provide the highest level of sanitation and control the deadly virus that looms all around us. We are encouraged by the notion that the youngest children do not seem to be prone to catching the virus yet, and they don't display many of the symptoms that have consumed adults around the world. Teachers are a resilient and proactive group of people. We have always been willing to go above and beyond to instruct, nurture, and provide safe, secure environments for children. It often demands extra time, energy, and money, but we are willing to sacrifice for the benefit of our students. We are frightened right now. We know that this experiment is very much like going into a battle. You are sending us in and hoping that the collateral damage will be minimal. We certainly hope so too, but the question is why? Why is the risk of collateral damage outweighing the support of our current method of instruction? Why would you do my job? I mean, even before we had COVID-19 and we were instructing online. Could you do my job? I would love to see you in a classroom with 32 4th graders or 19 2nd graders. It's not a picnic. Every moment is filled with something that demands your attention, and it doesn't stop. Not when you need a sip of coffee, not when you need to go to the bathroom, not when you can't find the book you are looking for to read. Children require a lot of attention. I think parents and our society as a whole would come to realize that fact. Children require a lot of attention. Parents can't get their work done when there are children at home 24/7. Even tasks as simple as making dinner or getting the laundry done are affected. Getting a sip of coffee, going to the bathroom. Our very economy rests on the shoulders of teachers, but doesn't our economy actually rest on the shoulders of our children? Their very existence necessitates school for the simplest reason, so that parents can go to work in whatever form that may be. Before public schools even existed, parents had to figure out how to participate in the economy and still have their children underfoot. It led to some fairly deplorable practices, including child labor and abuse. Public schools were created to provide the masses with an education. Children did not have to work in a factory or provide slave labor in any industry once public education became the norm and child labor laws were enacted. Of course, public education has yet to fight tooth and nail to get funding, despite the fact that it is pivotal to the health and wealth of our country. Finally, I do believe many people are now seeing the incredibly powerful role that schools play because many are unable to do their work when their children are with them. Parents are becoming increasingly focused on getting their children back to school. This puts pressure on you. With the voices of friends and neighbors who believe that getting children back to school will solve their woes ringing in your ears, you have concluded that it is time. Let me just tell you what my students believe. I asked what they thought it was going to be like when we returned to school. They are so cute. They believe that they are finally going to see what their classroom really looks like. They want to see their decorations, my decorations. They believe that they are going to be able to play with their friends and go out to recess. They believe that they will be able to go visit their brothers, sisters, cousins, etc., who are on the kindergarten playground enjoying themselves. They believe that they are eating their snack and lunch over in the lunch area. They believe that they are going to be able to touch books, crayons, scissors, paper, and a lot of other things at school. They believe that everyone is going to be healthy and happier and healthy because we finally get to be together. What they don't know or truly don't understand is that they will have to wear masks the entire time, even if they get uncomfortable. They don't know that they'll be 6 feet apart at all times. They don't fully understand that they won't be able to touch anything except their own desk, individual materials, and even their Chromebook. They don't get that they won't be able to play with anyone, including their own family at school. They don't get that they will have to wait to eat until assigned times at designated locations. They don't comprehend that they can't go to the bathroom any old time. They will have to wait until our designated time for bathroom use. They don't get that it isn't going to be like it used to be at school. It's going to be restricting. If they have a hard time sitting still for our online class, this is going to be that magnified. They will be sitting still at a desk, doing their work and listening. They won't be actively participating. It is never, and I mean ever, going to be exactly the same as they remember it. Just as it is the happy memories that make us feel that those were the good old days, children are going to see that the harsh reality is that we have to be super careful, follow more rules, get less time to play, and obey more restrictions for safety. The good old days are not back. It is a new day, and it is going to be hard. We used to talk a lot about 21st century teaching and learning skills. We knew it would involve technology. We knew there would be less paper and pencil and more ability to access. We knew we would need to teach students how to type, how to get to various sites for learning, how to log on to a Chromebook and also a PC, how to behave in a chat, how to play, how to stay safe online, and a plethora of other skills. We didn't know it was going to be vital for students to be able to do all this and more from home so quickly. We didn't know our skills would have to improve exponentially if we were going to be able to guide our students and their parents to perform school skills at home. We didn't know, but we did it anyway. We have learned an incredible amount in a short amount of time. There are bumps and there are issues, but we are doing the best that we possibly humanly, physically, psychologically, professionally can. It is working. As we prepare to go back into the classrooms, I hope you are right. I hope your thought experiment has arrived at the right conclusion. However, I feel that you are wrong. I feel that we are going to start down this path and there will be collateral damage. People will lose their lives, either themselves directly or a family member who is more vulnerable. People will die as a direct result of the fractional chance that safety protocols fail or hygiene is not upheld or children are just children and do things like forget to wash their hands or pick their noses. The virus is going to be spread, often carried unwittingly by symptom-free individuals who simply do not know the harm they can cause. In places where they have opened up around the world, they are discussing the fact that they will probably have to reinforce restrictions on the public. Lockdowns are being put in place in second waves of pandemic. The world is a very different place. Personally, I recommend that we treat it as such and figure out ways to help students and their families to cope with the changes we face as a society. Please remember that lives are lost as a result of your decision are on you. Our families will blame you because you have made this decision. I hope you understand the gravity and ramification of your actions. I believe you are making this decision based on pressure because the current status of our district has not improved to the point where it makes any sense to choose in-person classes right now. Or you come and do our job. Please, I want to see that. Get into the classrooms every single day, not just a drop-in visit. Stay, teach, help. Don't send us into trenches that you are not willing to inhabit yourselves. General George Washington did it. It is the sign of a true leader to get in among your people and do what they are doing. If you stand back and watch, you are not good leaders. You are just bossy leaders who tell other people what to do. Get in the trenches. Then you may see a different side of the situation. Then you might just entertain the possibility that online learning is the best approach to solve this problem. We just need to keep supporting that endeavor. It can work. It is a new world after all. I know my letter is long. I hope you have been able to listen carefully to its contents. I do not write flippantly or without a great deal of contemplation.
Dr. Hayes? We're at about an hour or so in. Why don't we take about a 10-minute break and we'll reconvene at 7 p.m. and we can finish the rest of the public comments.
Okay,
Okay, we'll reconvene at 7. Okay, and finish the public comments and then we'll move on with the agenda from there.
okay.
Okay, do we have all our board members back?
I'm here. My video is still not working. I'm here.
Okay. Looks like we have just one more. Mr. Perez, you there? Well, while we're waiting, I'll just say thank you very much for everyone. We have a lot of letters to read tonight. Public comment is normally restricted to 3 minutes, but in an effort to make sure that everybody's public comments are heard, we're reading them in their entirety. And so thank you for everybody's patience as we listen to all the public comments. And apologize, we're having some technical difficulties and some glitches here. So with that, it looks like everybody's back. And so Dr. Hayes, if you'd like to continue with the public comments.
Okay, thank you. So my next letter is from Brittany Ortiz, second grade teacher, Campus Canyon College Preparatory Academy. Dear MUSD School Board Trustees, thanks for taking the time to listen to everyone's thoughts and opinions regarding this very challenging decision to reopen our Moorpark schools. I would like you to all know that I miss my students immensely. It has been challenging to read my favorite books to my students and have them on mute. Not hearing their laughs and having our usual interactions saddens me. Even though these are difficult times, my students are stepping up, learning lots of new things. Together, we have built a loving and caring classroom community safely through distance learning. As a teacher, I believe that students need to feel safe and valued in order to learn and grow. I have spent countless hours researching how to best provide for my students to learn in this new environment. I have learned best practices, and I know I can promise to make my students feel valued and loved. What I cannot promise is keeping them safe if we return to school too early. There is a lot of fear and uncertainty that now comes with walking into a school, not knowing if you are going to stay healthy. Over 200,000 Americans have lost their lives as of Sunday, September 20th, from coronavirus. We have learned that social distance, wearing a mask, and washing your hands are helpful ways to protect ourselves. Working with younger students, they need help with following these new expectations. If we do not all follow these guidelines correctly, we are at risk of getting many people sick and possibly costing them their lives. We will be entering into the flu season soon, and this is an even more dangerous time to be returning. I want to return to school at the right time. I worry about my students' safety, their families, my colleagues, their families, and my personal family who are at-risk members. I fear that if we return too early, we will also be disrupting our students' learning. I only have a limited time with my students, and much of that time will be spent making sure they follow our proper safety protocol. I will be losing valuable instructional minutes to help them grow as learners. I am scared I will not be able to comfort frightened students. There is now daily fear when we all come to school because there is no proof yet showing us that we can learn and work in a safe environment. This can cause stress for both students and adults since we will be increasing our exposure to others and ultimately our health is at risk. Research has shown that learning does not take place if students are stressed or scared. There is also the possibility of needing to return back to distance learning because someone may get sick. This back and forth will be extremely challenging and disruptive for the students, families, and teachers. We are learning our routines online. We are learning academic content online. We are learning to be a supportive team online, and we know we are learning safer at home. Please wait to reopen our Moorpark schools until we have more evidence to prove that we can continue to be safe at school as well. Thank you for allowing me to voice my opinion and taking it into your consideration. My next comment is from Joey and Corinne Casillas. Hello, as a mom of 3 in the Moorpark School District, we are highly in support of the students returning to in-person school. They need the in-person instruction, social interaction, peer review, and motivation, in-person communication, and competition. They deserve the same education as we all received. It is essential to their growth and development. Preschools, camps, and private schools all around us have been doing in-person instruction successfully. All of our friends who can afford private instruction have been going full days. We do not want an educational gap that expansive from private school to public school education. If orthodontists and dentist office, pediatrician offices, retail, grocery, restaurants, and all the employees who work there and come in contact with the people and children can be available for services, our schools should be open for in-person instruction as well. We say this with the most respect and appreciation for teachers and staff and their families' well-being and their families and well-being as well. So many other careers don't have any choice to stay at home or not, as I've listed a few. Please consider our future generation and their education, mental health, and well-being. Thank you so much for all that you do in considering this imperative step forward for in-person elementary education. The next comment is from Courtney Nickel. To the Moore Park Unified School Board members, my name is Courtney Nickel. I have two sons who attend Walnut Canyon Elementary School. They are in kindergarten and second grade. I am writing to you today to express my concern and frustration with distance learning and to thank you for submitting the waiver to return to in-classroom instruction. As parents, we truly appreciate your support in this. Since distance learning began, my children have had daily meltdowns and tantrums, and I recognize that this is their anxiety and stress manifesting as uncharacteristic behavior. We are not the only ones struggling. I refuse to accept this as our new norm. Education is essential. Our children have the right to a traditional education. Distance learning is not an acceptable alternative. Private schools, preschools, and camps have opened with precautions in place. There is no reason public schools cannot do the same. It was very disheartening to learn that 70% of our teachers voted against a waiver to return to the classroom. I cannot understand how teachers can see their students and families suffering and still vote against submitting the waiver. I cannot understand how educators who understand the importance of education as well as social and emotional development think distance learning is appropriate for kids, especially at the elementary school level. These children need some normalcy in their lives. They need to return to the classroom. The next letter is from Jennifer Graham Hesketh. Dear Moore Park Unified School Board members, I would like to start by thanking each one of you for making the decision to move forward and apply for the waiver. I would also like to publicly thank the 30% of teachers in the district who voted in favor of the waiver as well. Your decisions show your dedication and willingness to advocate for every child and family in our amazing district. It is my hope that if the waiver is approved, nothing will stop the board from doing what is right and letting our children return to the classroom. As a parent of two students at Walnut Canyon, who also has spent many years in education, I find it not only appalling, but incredibly inconsiderate to see the overwhelming vote of almost 70% of our teachers and 60% of staff had voted to not move forward with the waiver. I understand there are exceptions and medical reasons that might drive these decisions. However, I find it near impossible that every teacher and staff who voted this down has medical complications, prohibiting them from being able to safely return to the classroom. If there are true medical reasons and the risk is too high, I understand your vote and I support it. Speaking from an educator's perspective, I could list all the reasons that support the fact that distance learning is not a sufficient alternative for a traditional in-class education. However, there will not be enough time in this meeting to read through all these reasons, and even more importantly, our educators already know them. Every single educator in this district knows down in their hearts that they are not able to meet the needs of their students through a computer screen as successfully as they could in person, nor should we expect them to be able to. It would be an unfair expectation and not humanly possible. Many crucial components of our children's development have been and will continue to be taken from them if distance learning continues when the opportunity to return to class is available. Distance learning provides our children with a one-size-fits-all style of learning, and that is if they are lucky enough to not encounter technical difficulties. Since when, as a community of educators, have we decided that a one-size-fits-all education is acceptable? It should not be accepted by anyone in the field of education or any teacher in this district ever. If the teachers refuse to return, this is all our children will receive, and it is not enough. Furthermore, distance learning is shaping a negative educational experience within our children. It has created frustrations, self-doubt, tears, confusion, and challenges, which the parents are then left to navigate. Unfortunately, these are becoming problems within the home and are creating a volatile living environment. I could share many stories along with other parents in our district, but I will spare you the disheartening details. During the past few weeks, parents of public school children have observed children who attend private schools return to the classroom. Teachers have returned as well. I applaud those teachers and have a great respect for them. Wouldn't it be nice to see all the teachers in the Moore Park district be willing to do the same? I would like to propose a few questions to every teacher who voted down the waiver. Are children of parents who can afford private school more deserving of an in-class education? Do public school students with parents that cannot afford a private tuition not deserve to return to the classroom? Has the new normal become, if you can pay for an education in the classroom, your child can return? Many parents need to rethink their enrollment and support for a district with 70% of its educators being unwilling to support the waiver. The waiver moves us closer to returning to the education our students deserve. Many essential workers have gone back to work or never stopped working during this pandemic. Have the teachers of this community decided they are not essential? Is a classroom education no longer essential to the development and success of our children? Teachers are and have always been essential. With new protocols and safety measures in place, it is time to open the doors in order to meet the needs of every single child in this district. Open the doors like our children's futures depend on it. I will leave you with this personal account from a Walnut Canyon student who visited her grandparents over the weekend, a child who loved school and thrived emotionally and educationally. She also won the award of most respectful for the past 2 years from teachers who got to know her and love her in class. My mom asked, Gia, why are you in bed biting your nails? Gia Hesketh, Nana, school on my computer is too hard and it makes me nervous. Open our schools. And the last one that I have is from Christina Booth, Moore Park High School Special Education Specialist. Dear Moore Park School Board members, as a high school teacher and one who is over 55, I am worried about my returning to school. I would love to return to school as usual. I miss my students and I think I miss getting to know their personalities. I am worried about what will happen if we return to in-person school with no contact. I will not be able to walk up to a student's desk and offer assistance. I will not be able to allow students to move the desk and get into groups. I will be teaching on the computer while they are here with their computers, and I do not think it will be effective. Students may think they are invincible, but I do not. I worry that they will be in close contact on campus, and I know there will be adults telling them to social distance. The students are social by nature. They are not adults and have trouble understanding that this distancing benefits all of us. Please consider your decisions carefully. I want to keep teaching. I feel safe teaching from my class at MHS for 4 days a week and from home 1 day a week. I am not ready to stop teaching. I want to return to school and students, but I will be happier if the return is put off until the situation is better. Please don't rush a decision to send students back to the classroom. And that concludes my public comments.
Okay, I'm next, and my first one is Dr. Zara Navarro from Moore Park High School. Dear MUSD School Board, I would like to voice concerns over the rush to implement blended or in-person classes within the district. It was noted in the school board meeting on 9/15 that over 70% of the elementary school teachers did not feel safe to return to the classroom. It was also noted that over 60% of classified staff did not feel safe to return to campus. Given the fact that most teachers want to err on the side of caution, I feel teachers' voices should be given more consideration than what was witnessed at this meeting. While there are PPE guidelines stated in the Return to Work Safely manual, I do not think that the logistics of having students present on campus have been properly addressed. The questions that I would like to have answered to are below. 1, blended and at-home participation. If teachers have students both in the class and at home, will students be required to submit and complete work at the same time, or will they have additional time since they are online? Will the students in the classroom be expected to follow the lessons plans on campus, just like the students will at home via Google Meet? If a student at home leaves the meeting, will he be considered a non-active participant? These classes will be 2.5 hours at the high school for both students who are physically in class and those at home. Teachers, parents, and students should have guidelines for behavior and attendance. In-class students will not be able to move about the classroom. 6 feet social distancing will not allow it. Students at school will be on the computer just like the students at home. They will not have the opportunity to work in groups or to visit other students or the teacher's desk. Has this been communicated to the parents? It will not be the usual status quo for school participation. Number 2, logistics of students on campus. MUSD has furloughed 180 classified employees. Please explain exactly who will monitor student social distancing on campus. Who will monitor carpools or parking lot socialization? Who will monitor the dismissal of students to go to the restroom and return to class? What will happen if a student does not leave the campus due to transportation issues at his allotted time? Will students have lockers, and if so, who will monitor lockers and gates to ensure that they are clean to CDC guidelines? Number 3, teacher and student illness due to COVID. There have been numerous cases of COVID in schools that have been physically open throughout the US. Most have had to shift back to online learning within a matter of days, not weeks. Additionally, students and teachers have had to quarantine if they test positive. This is particularly concerning to students who must replan lesson plans to the 1.5 class periods versus the 2.5 class periods. Will we implement the 1.5 class period with a 3 classes per day rotation, or have it remain as a 2.5-hour class period. It will be difficult at best if parents must replan their schedules for this constant shift, and it will more than likely occur more than once. At the last school board meeting, Dr. Hayes indicated that COVID testing would have to be done via the county's free testing centers or through testing provided by employees' healthcare providers. How often will this testing be required? Who will pay the expense of this requirement, employees or the district? What if the only available times are during the school day? It is also noted that the results may take over a week to be determined. This is a potential week of exposure to others. If a teacher becomes permanently disabled from COVID exposure at school, what compensation will they receive? If they die, what compensation will their families receive? Teachers committed to educate students, not to be the frontline testers during a pandemic. There have been accommodations made for high-risk students. These students have the opportunity for distance learning only. What plan is in place for higher risk teachers? Is it the district open to providing accommodations for this group? If a higher risk teacher has limitations and accommodations, what happens if a student is not required to wear a mask? Do teachers have the option of transferring the student out of their class? My family and I have taken the guidelines from CDC very seriously. We have not pursued hobbies, traveled, or seen family and friends. Both my husband and my oldest daughter are working remotely for an indefinite amount of time. Their respective offices want to keep the employees safe. My youngest daughter is working at a lab that is actually working on a vaccine. Any exposure to a potential COVID positive individual will be horrific. They will basically have to close the lab to self-quarantine. This has made my family even more safety conscious. Moorpark's numbers have been low, but it is important to remember that many students and staff live outside of Moorpark city limits, which increases exposure in a back-to-school learning environment. It was brought up several times in the last board meeting that the spike in numbers was due to infections in the correctional facility and nursing homes. How many students and staff have family members who frequent those facilities to visit? That was never even brought up. We all want to return to class, but I want to return back to class when it is safe to do so. I do not think that we have a realistic plan to do so at this time. Regards. My next one is from Heidi Hoban, kindergarten teacher at Arroyo West. Dear board members, I read a perfect saying the other day as it represents so many of us. You can be replaced at work, but you can't be replaced at home. I am usually a quiet person who does as I am instructed to do because that's what is asked of me. However, this is not a time where my voice should be silent. I am a wife and a mother to two amazing sons. My oldest son is only 14 years old and he has had 3 kidney transplants, with the last being 3 years ago. Just imagine that for a second. And now add COVID and what you're asking me to risk as I continue my letter. I have been a kindergarten teacher at Arroyo West for the past 6 years, and not once have I complained about my situation or allowed it to take away from the passion I have about teaching. Taking a leave of absence after my son's last transplant was never in my mind. And let me be honest when I say that the emotional and mental beating one takes from seeing your child go through some of the pain they endure is more than most can handle. But I went back to my classroom a month later and taught as best as I could. Why am I bringing this up? I am at the point where I'm replaceable at work, but I cannot be replaced as a mom, and my son can definitely not be replaced. But what you are asking of us is exactly that. You're asking us to risk our own health and that of our loved ones. In the very first survey months ago, you asked if we are immune compromised, but you failed to ask if we are taking care of someone who is. I have lived every single day as a mom with a child who has been at risk since he was 1 day old. You didn't ask if I was comfortable risking my life or my son's life. I am not. Instead, you asked your questions and negated to really consider what you're asking of us. My chosen career, especially with the littlest of learners, forces me to be in close proximity to my students for hours at a time every day. I have learned how to balance the inherent risks of my job with the safety of my child for the last 6 years. I feel I can no longer do that with COVID. You voted 5-0 to apply for the waiver. What happened to the 70% of teachers who voted they were not comfortable going back to on-campus learning? Did you ever consider asking what the hesitation of returning to the classroom was? I understand that with 300 teachers, we have 300 stories and situations, but our lives and voices matter and need to be heard. Just as our students are not numbers, neither are we. I promise we want to be at school with our students. Working from home is not as easy as being in a classroom, especially in kindergarten with students who are experiencing school for the first time. However, it is safer for all of us. I will end this with asking, are you truly comfortable with your vote? Can you honestly say you are comfortable asking staff to risk themselves and the health of their family? What will you do when teachers file for FMLA? Will you be there to replace them? As we tell our little friends, sometimes it's okay to be a leader and not a follower. Are you going to be the leader or follower to something you truly do not believe in? This is your chance to show the teachers who you are. Warmest regards, Heidi Hoban. My next is an email from Christy Ellison. Dear school board members and Dr. Hayes, you have all heard from me privately, but I also wanted to thank you publicly. Thank you for doing what is best for our children and voting to apply for the waiver to open schools. And know that your decision was not taken lightly. Frankly, I'm appalled that nearly 70% of our teachers opposed this decision. They were given the opportunity to speak up, just as parents and community members were. I do not recall hearing any comment read from teachers at the recent board meetings. Now that the decision was made to apply for the waiver, everyone's in a tizzy. Here is food for thought. Do the teachers opposed to the waiver not go to the store? Do they not go to Target? During these daily tasks, safely is no different than being able to be in the classroom safely. Finally, if the entertainment business workers have been deemed essential, then teachers should absolutely be as well. Thank you again for your time and all that you do for our children, schools, and community. I have an email from Anita Brock, Campus Canyon 4-5 grade teacher. Board of Trustees, we have a daughter who is immune compromised and currently in the blended learning program. We were unaware and frankly shocked that you have applied for the schools to open prior to the state giving us clearance. We only signed up for the blended learning with the intention of returning to school when deemed safe by the state. We no longer feel comfortable sending our child under this waiver and would like to know her options with the least amount of disruptions. For example, teacher or school change. Her school's distance learning cohorts for her grade level are currently full. Please advise. Thank you, Russ and Anita Brock. This one here is from the kindergarten teachers at Peach Hill Academy, Alma Gallardo, Taylor Severn, Erin Winters, the transitional kindergarten teacher at Peach Hill Academy, Teresa Fernandez, and the kindergarten teacher at Campus Canyon, Tina Walker. Dear members of the board and MUSD administrative team, in our combined 50+ years of teaching transitional kindergarten and kindergarten, we have known Moorpark Unified to be a front runner in our area. However, in the race to reopen schools in light of a global pandemic, we do not believe that we should strive to lead the pack. After listening to the board discuss the waiver process during the September 15th board meeting, we were left disheartened and with many questions. Our main frustration lies in the lack of consideration that was given as a result of the staff survey concerning prematurely allowing students to re-enter campus. A strong message was sent when 70% of our elementary staff shared that they did not feel safe having students return to school. The school board's decision to continue on with the application process for a waiver indicates that a large stakeholder group is being ignored. Please know that we are anxiously awaiting our transitional kindergartners and kindergartners return to school, but only when it is safe and effective to do so. We recognize that distance learning is not the best practice for such young learners, but the physical learning environment that will be able to provide under COVID restrictions is also not appropriate. With the restrictions placed upon schools, 4- and 5-year-olds will not be allowed to play indoors or outdoors, will have no interaction with their peers, and will be required to sit at a desk spaced 6 feet apart from one another for 2.5 hours. Our young students need to be able to move around the classroom, interact and problem solve with their classmates, and play imaginatively. Currently, students can do this in safety in their own homes. They have space to move about, and many have sources of imaginative play in their homes. This type of learning will not happen under the current blended learning model. When it is safe for our students to return, we want to ensure there is appropriate support and resources to engage them in a rich, developmentally appropriate learning environment. With the blended learning plan, we are inviting our youngest children who are still learning appropriate hygiene habits back into our shared learning spaces. Below are questions that we would like the school board to address. What is the plan for when even one individual of the classroom is exposed to COVID? Will the whole class quarantine for 14 days? If the teacher is quarantining, who is teaching the children for the 14 days? How will the classroom teacher be able to, and will teachers be expected to seamlessly return back to distance learning? Much of the onset for keeping communities and classrooms safe falls onto the backs of teachers. Will teachers be responsible for taking temperatures and turning students away at the door? Will teachers be held responsible for any discrepancies in temperature taking? We have no control over whether or not families decide to visit high exposure areas. However, they would be entering our classroom each day. What support will be in place to aid staff in teaching? Are all supplies for effectively teaching student, for example, cables for new technology or individual learning supplies for students, and keeping classrooms safe, wipes, Clorox 360 machine, thermometers, masks, facials, etc., readily available for the October 5th target date? Will the district provide the necessary personnel support so that teachers can focus on the goal of educating our students without having the added distraction and responsibility of dealing with the pandemic situation, taking temperatures, escorting students to the nurse, sanitizing materials and desks in between cohorts? We acknowledge that this is a big decision in unprecedented time, and we urge you to consider the safety and well-being of all stakeholders as you make this decision. We always encourage the gift of time to our younger students for achieving success. Perhaps this concept can also be applied to the matters of reopening elementary sites prematurely. And my last one is from Steve Rauch. Dear members of the board, before I begin, I think it's important you know who I am and a little bit about my life. My name is Steve Roach, and I am a 5th grade teacher at Peach Hill Academy. I live in the town I grew up in, Newbury Park, with my wife and our 2-year-old son. We'll be adding a 4th member to our family in January. The struggles we faced these past months are probably both similar and different than your own. We've all felt the weight of this pandemic nonetheless. For a long time, I think like most people, my relationship with how I felt about coronavirus changed regularly. Some days I questioned the odds and considered the consequences every time I left the house. Other days I thought I was going to lose my mind, so I dragged my kid to Home Depot and I'd impulse buy everything from houseplants to power tools. All that changed in August though, when one of my friends got coronavirus. Then his wife got it bad. Then one of my other friends got it. Then she infected her whole family. It was a wake-up call for me. This virus is still out there and it doesn't care who you are or how careful you're being. On September 14th, Ventura County public health officials issued guidelines for what is permitted and not permitted this Halloween, a holiday that's well over a month away. One of the prohibited activities was door-to-door trick-or-treating. The reasons were numerous: the ability to socially distance on porches, the inability to guarantee the person answering the door is masked, and because sharing food was deemed risky. It didn't surprise me to hear this because similar restrictions have been issued across our state and county for months now. What surprised me came a day later while watching the board meeting online, when the board unanimously voted in favor of submitting a waiver application to get K-5 students back to school. County health officials canceled the best part about Halloween, an outdoor activity, the day before, and the board decided this would be a good time to get kids back in the classroom. What shocked me more is that 70% of our K-5 teaching staff very clearly opposed these waivers, but it didn't seem to rattle any of you. Just so we're clear, 30% approval, that's enough. And the 70% approval from parents, that's a C-. Last night, I thought about this deeply and decided to take charge of what I can control, my voice. This letter is hard to write. I don't want my students, their families, or my colleagues to think less of me for my opinion, but I'm afraid for the health of the people I love, so I have no choice but to speak. I also care about the education of my 5th grade students. I also care about the education my 5th grade students receive. I believe the current distance learning model is far superior than the blended learning model for a number of reasons, which I'll get to below. Speaking strictly from a pedagogical point of view, I seriously question the effectiveness of blended learning while adhering to these strict guidelines, regardless of tier color. I know that we all just want what's best for children in our community, but I wonder how many of you and how many parents in our district really know what's going to look like when we go back. First of all, my students will be expected to keep their masks on throughout class. That's 2.5 hours. They won't be allowed to leave their desk, interact with peers, or receive individualized instruction. They won't work in groups to build missions, construct Rube Goldberg machines, or check books out from the school library. There won't be volunteers, there won't be recess, there won't be a smile to be seen in our classroom. It won't be normal school. Instead, they'll have to sit in one place, keep their mask on, and hold their focus up front in a near empty room while I try my best to make lemonade out of apples. When I mentioned just the part about the masks to my students, they looked horrified. It's clear my parents have not yet talked with their students about what school will look like when they return. While it will be tough for them, I can't even begin to tell you what a challenge this is going to be for our younger students and their teachers. I feel for all their health and safety. I'm not just talking about coronavirus either. I'm talking about the very real fear of coronavirus that is clearly struck at least 70% of our teachers. How well are these kids going to learn in a classroom where they can't be kids and their teachers are suffering from high levels of stress and anxiety? When my students go back to Peach Hill Academy, they'll be more capable of following the rules than the younger peers, but they'll be learning in an environment that is less effective than the current distance learning model. Right now, my students get to see each other's face every single day. I think it's as much a joy for me as it is for them, especially in a time when seeing so many smiles in one place is such a rare, if not impossible thing. Right now, we all use our class time. Right now, we use all of our class time. There's no wasting for kids to use the bathroom or waiting for temperatures to be taken or waiting for hands to be washed. It's 150 minutes of learning and growing. Right now, my students and I are capable of manipulating these new technologies to meet as a whole class in small groups and in one-to-one meetings simultaneously. We won't have that option with the blended learning model in my classroom, at least not while maintaining current guidelines. The point that I'm making is that distance learning is working for the overwhelming majority of my class. Blended learning will not. During your last meeting, the question of how private schools are doing came up, now that many have opened in our local communities. While you currently recognize it was too early to know whether or not anyone's health had been at risk, I believe it is incorrect to say it is going well. I have friends and family working at private schools across the county and country as close by as Thousand Oaks, and they all say the same thing. Kids and staff aren't socially distanced. It honestly shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. This is human nature. We see this playing out all over the county. Have you been to the Oaks Mall or Whole Foods lately? It's a mess. Just because measures are in place doesn't mean those measures will be taken seriously. For example, how many times did you or someone you saw on the road drive over the speed limit last week? Just because there's rules on our campus doesn't mean they'll be followed. I know this from experience. In many cases, kids and rules are like oil and water. This isn't necessarily because they're trying to misbehave. Rules can be difficult to understand for students this young. That's Child Development 101. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that even when there isn't a pandemic, behavior management is one of the most challenging aspects of the teaching profession, especially when teaching kids 5 to 11. I want to make something clear. I want to come back to school. That was never a question I was asked. While I might have been against applying for the waiver, and while I fear for my health, my family's health, and the lives of others in the community, I want to come back to school. I just want it to be safe when we return, and I want the education my students receive to be the same quality or better than what they got from distance learning. Teaching in Moorpark has truly been one of the greatest joys of my life, and I don't think it's worth dying over. If I knew just one person in our community was going to die as a result of coming back for in-person learning, I'd never even consider the notion of reopening schools, but that's why we have public health officials to guide us through these crises, so we don't have to make these choices as teachers, fire captains, and funeral directors. Let science decide when it is safe to return to our campuses. The consequences could be minuscule, I'm first to admit that, but those consequences could just as easily be sickness and death. I urge the board to please think carefully about sending us back to school prematurely before our threat level is downgraded and before we can offer our students a better alternative to distance learning. I thank you for your time and appreciate all that you do for our staff and families here in Moorpark. Sincerely, Steve Roach. That was my last one.
Okay, I have the next group. This first one is from Natalie and Dave Chapman, Moorpark mom, Moorpark dad, and teachers in Moorpark for more than 20 years. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We struggle writing this because we would give anything to see our sophomore smiling in the hallways of Moorpark High School with his friends. We truly want nothing more to be back to normal in the classroom with our kids. However, the return to school will be anything but normal. Students will be using Canvas on their Chromebooks in poorly ventilated classrooms with 14 peers they may or may not know, masks on for 2.5 hours. Then they will go home. Only one class a day, no lunch, no passing periods, no group work, no partner activities, no real teacher interaction. Ask your child what they love best about school. We are certain that their answers will be something that isn't allowed to happen when we return. Like most MUSD parents, we crave normalcy. COVID has stolen so much joy from our family and many others. A return to school too soon will not bring normalcy or joy. The schedule is drastically different than what it is now. Parents and students will quickly realize their hopes and expectations do not translate into positive reality. We strongly believe returning too soon will cause more harm than good. Finally, we respectfully urge the board to please listen to your teachers. Teachers are the heart and soul of MUSD, and they deserve the opportunity to have their voices acknowledged. The parent part of this completely relates to your desire to return to your own children to normal. The teacher part of us hopes you can remember that we have loved your children as our own and would never want anything but the absolute best for them. The next one is from Brian Spencer. Dear MUSD School Board and MEA leadership, I am writing this as a concerned parent and essential worker who believes schools need to resume in the classroom. My name is Brian Spencer. My children attend Walnut Canyon Elementary School. Thank you to the board for applying for the in-person waiver. I am a police officer and essential worker. I have been working the entire time we have been in lockdown. I have risked my own health and the health of my family in order to fulfill my duties as a sworn officer. Education is essential. Teachers are essential, and it is essential that our kids return to the classroom. While I know the teachers have concerns about returning to the classroom, and in an effort to voice these concerns in an email was drafted and will be read or submitted to the board. After obtaining a copy of this letter, I felt compelled to provide some possible solutions and input from a parent and essential worker's perspective. Here are some simple suggestions that might make it easier to overcome your concerns, which frankly are not nearly as damaging as distance learning is and will continue to be on our youth. Number one, our students have spent the past 3 weeks getting to know their teachers as much as possible virtually. They know their names, their faces are familiar, and they have formed the beginning of a relationship with them. Our children have spent the past 6 months meeting and encountering people wearing masks and have adapted. They have been prepared for this. 2, children are capable of following directions and being able to walk in a singular direction. It's all about consistency and repetition of new routines. 3, many kids have been confined to their homes for 6 months. A change of scene in the classroom will be healthy for them and give them the opportunity to separate home life and school life. There should be a distinction. 4, our children have been wearing masks for 6 months. This is not a new concept for them. 5, why can't teachers provide small group instructions or one-on-one from their desk while their children are working independently on assignments that are at their level? This is actually quite simple if you are able to establish a center-driven classroom where students rotate through their activities in a pre-established time frame. There are many resources on how to run centers in a classroom, and I know educators who are happy to provide them. 6, lunch will be provided at home after the cohort gets out at 10:45 or prior to the second cohort starting. 7, teachers have been looking at swings and empty playgrounds for 6 months. Yet I've yet to hear of any of them not surviving this obstacle. There is no reason children cannot play on equipment. They are capable of washing their hands, and wiping down the equipment would take little or no time. 8, we have provided our own supplies at home. We will be happy to send them with our children so they can continue using them in the classroom. 9, there hasn't been a field trip since March. This is not a reason to keep schools closed. 11, teachers should not be wiping an elementary child's nose anyway. They are definitely able to model the appropriate way for a child to wipe their own nose. 12, regarding COVID and self-isolating, this is standard procedure given the situation we live in. We should take a look at the private schools and see how they have done with returning to the classroom. 13, parents, we enjoy volunteering. As parents, we enjoy volunteering, but we are willing to sacrifice this in order to get back into the classroom. 14, this can be solved by configuring your lines. Our children are not learning anything through Zoom meetings and independent work. We as parents are not teachers, If the district feels that we are just as capable as teachers, it means credentials required for teaching are obsolete and teachers are easily replaceable. Many Moorpark families have 2 working parents. Parents are being forced to withdraw from the workforce to homeschool, placing financial burdens on families that will last for years. The rest of the world is back at work, and a large part of the country has students back in classrooms full time. It's time for our teachers to step up and do the job they signed up for, educating children. The next one is from Tamara Kreider. Dear MUSD School Board members, my name is Tamara Kreider. I began at Moorpark Unified as a kindergartner at Peach Hill. I've grown up alongside many of you and your family members and have experienced the highs and lows of our city's great history with you. I am a teacher on special assignment in MUSD who is extremely concerned about Moorpark's waiver petition and reopening plan. As a technology specialist, I strive to be on the cutting edge of education and technologically progressive. I believe that health and safety require conservative decision-making. I'm writing to ask you to prioritize the health and safety of the residents and staff of Moorpark Unified. I believe it is unsafe for anyone to return to the classroom environment at this time. In the best of times, a school is a petri dish of disease. Scientists now believe COVID-19 can be aerosolized and HVAC systems may spread the virus. Still, so little is known by the brightest and most well-informed of us. How can you send teachers and students back into the classrooms that are breeding grounds for the virus when so little is really known? Educators provide an essential service. However, we didn't sign up for life and death services. Our services can and should be provided virtually during this dangerous time. I understand that the social emotional well-being of children is being brought into question. However, has anyone asked the question, how would a student feel when they realize they made their teacher, whom they love dearly, sick or die, or even die? Remote learning is the only way to ensure the virus doesn't spread in our schools and out into the larger community. Please keep Moorpark safe. The next one is from Glennis Page. Dear members of the board, I write to you again this week to voice my concerns over the decision to apply for the waiver and the opening of our K-5 schools to the blended learning model as soon as October 5th. I know that many have voiced their concerns, so I am going to keep this short and to the point. Our public school district is much larger and with many more moving parts, personnel, and staff than private or charter schools in the county. A plan perfected on paper does not translate to everyday safety for staff and families. Even with the best of intentions, the amount of exposure and discrepancies we will face on a daily basis just doesn't seem worth the risk, in my opinion. If 70% of teachers in our district are not comfortable returning, it should be a clear sign that this choice does not serve everyone's best interest and safety. I'm sure I won't be the only person to mention this, but the most crystal clear example of how we are not, as a county, ready to return to normalcy is the fact that this board meeting is being held virtually, while teachers are spending their own money buying plexiglass for their desks, disinfecting wipes and sanitizing spray, and air purifiers to prepare themselves to teach in enclosed spaces with 17 students for 2.5 hours, 2 times every day. Stephen Covey said, "What you do has far greater impact than what you say. You say you appreciate our hard work. You say you can't imagine how hard our jobs are. You say you support what's best for all stakeholders, but what you do speaks much louder than what you say." Teachers do the hard work every day to provide our students with quality learning opportunities, a safe space, and round-the-clock support. Make no mistake, We will do this from wherever we or the students are. But we ask you, allow us the opportunity to do it safely, where no one's health or livelihood is put in jeopardy. The next comment is from Jay Ellison. Dear MUSD board members, first I want to thank you for making the courageous and difficult decision to apply for the waiver to reopen schools in grades K through 5 for personal instruction on the blended learning model. Although things will be much different and even difficult at times, I believe that getting our kids back into a classroom setting will go really far in helping their confidence and helping them academically. Just being in the same setting with their classmates will ease the anxieties and frustrations many kids are feeling. At this point, most kids are familiar with wearing masks and constantly washing hands, as well as having to keep distance. We have had over 6 months to practice all the protocols being used to stay safe. I was disappointed to learn that a majority of teachers do not want to return to in-person instruction when the majority of parents want their kids to return. Parents are unenrolling their kids weekly from our district and going to private schools that are now open. With each student lost, there is a large amount of funding the district lost. How many students has the district lost now? I can't imagine what this has done to the district's budget. It comes down to simple economics. If the district is losing money, cuts will start to be made. The board is elected by the community. The community has spoken and want their kids back in school. If this district continues to lose student enrollment, think about how that will financially impact things and what the future of school in Moorpark will look like. We simply cannot go on like this anymore. Camp Moorpark has been operating since the summer and continues to operate with 0 incidents of COVID-19. Kids who are in 2nd grade and below don't even have to wear masks. If Camp Moorpark can be open to, our schools can be open. If the instructors at Camp Moorpark can go to work, our teachers can go back to work. The next comment is from Alma Gallardo. Dear members of the Board of Education and MUSD administrative team, as a veteran teacher of Moorpark for the past 30 years, I have been honored to work here and educate my own children in our wonderful school district that has been recognized for its excellent and magnificent educational programs. The decision to rush a request to open up our schools has really alarmed me, though. I am greatly concerned with the safety of our students, the staff, and our extended families. I think that this decision was made hurriedly and without regard to the worries and concerns of the teachers. Our voice matters and should be heard since we are the ones who know the children, their behaviors, their needs, and the safety issues that we will be confronting. It was very disappointing to see that the board didn't even address the fact that 70% of our teachers voted not to return at this uncertain and unsafe time. Teachers and students will be in the front line of the exposure. With the flu virus around the corner, experts are warning about the dangers. At this time, the risk is too high. In addition to these major concerns about safety, teachers have worked extremely hard to set up their distance learning programs. It took a lot of our blood, sweat, and tears since teachers once again had a minimal amount of time and training to get their distance learning programs set up and ready to go. As we continue to work exhaustively, we are now being asked to keep at pace while at the same time plan and set up an uncharted educational scenario within our classrooms. Since this is all still new to us, it continues to be a demanding, exhaustive job every day. I feel it is unreasonable to ask teachers to abruptly change course without all the guarantees of safety in place and without the support that we need. Rushing in so fast could cause a rapid return to a shutdown. They're making it very stressful to all concerned, especially to teachers who will suddenly, once again, have to shift and recreate their programs. It is important for parents to know the realities of this very different classroom environment. The schools have lost important and needed support staff. As a result, teachers are left alone to deal with the needs of children who will have extra challenges to deal with during these pandemic times. It makes no sense, especially to TK first grade through first grade teachers who know the extra needs of our little ones. Parents should also be aware that entering and exiting times will be very time consuming with the monitoring of temperatures, recording information, washing hands, etc. The amount of teaching time will certainly be decreased. As teachers, we look forward to the day that we can greet our students at school. But for their safety and ours, we would like it to be at a safer time. I urge you to please reconsider your decision to help us prepare for that proper time. The next comment is from Chris Barrett. Distinguished board, I appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective as a parent with twins in first grade at Florey. My wife and I both were deemed essential workers and have been working full-time throughout the entire pandemic. To say having kids at home and working full-time has been difficult is an understatement. The lack of school structure and direct supervision has resulted in major setbacks in overall behavior and has caused immense stress on our entire family. Luckily, this summer, the city of Moore Park allowed Camp Moore Park to go on, and we experienced a relatively normal summer. They are now attending base camp through the city for 4 hours a day and are attempting to juggle their time at home. Since the beginning of summer, my kids have been going to camp, exposed to teachers with masks and a small cohort of kids who are not. I do not understand how going to school would cause a greater exposure than camp. In fact, I'm sure it would be less as camp groups change weekly. If the district does not move forward with the waiver, our family may consider looking at other districts or private schools who do. We simply cannot sacrifice our kids' education and personal development by waiting. I know you are trying to balance all opinions, and I appreciate the difficulty of the task before you. Thank you for all you do for our kids. The next comment is from Jason and Jackie Flame, MUSD supporters, Moore Park residents, and Moore Park business owners. Good evening, MUSD School Board. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for filing the waiver to start the process of getting our kids back into the classrooms, at least for blended learning. As a parent and a self-starting, thank you, MUSD, college freshman and a high school sophomore, I know I have it a little easier than all the parents with little ones. However, even seeing this change in demeanor as I pick my son up from football conditioning shows me the value of social interaction. Since the county has allowed us to open our martial arts classes back up in person, outside, and physically distanced, we've had countless parents tell us how much happier, more productive, and energetic their children are. We've watched firsthand hundreds of our mutual students grow from being lethargic back to their active, spirited selves. And this is just with our little bit of in-person classes. Imagine what adding blended learning and reducing screen time, even just for a few hours a week, will do. Again, thank you for taking the giant step forward toward improving the mental and emotional health of our most important population, our children. The next one is from Melanie Brower. Dear MUSD Board, I write to you again this week to voice my concerns with the decisions made last week to apply for the waiver that allows our TK through 5 classes to open for blended learning, even though we have not met the state standards to do so. As you saw in the survey, there are roughly 70% of our teachers who did not support this. I understand you represent the parents as well, and this is a hard decision to make. With that, I bring up the roughly 30% of parents who said they don't feel safe having their children to return to school before we are out of the purple tier. How will we accommodate those parents? Please consider the amount of restructuring that would need to happen to make those parents feel safe and do what they think is best for their family. This is a huge undertaking, and I feel that it would be a waste of resources and valuable instructional time instead of waiting for the numbers to come down to remove us from the purple tier. This would allow for all schools to reopen for blended learning, not just TK through 5. I would also like to bring up the fact that we are heading into the holiday and flu season. Since this pandemic started, we have seen the numbers that follow holidays. I would be foolish to think this is going to change with the various holidays approaching. This will lead to multiple classes reverting to distance learning. I would also assume this could happen with very little warning, causing more challenges for parents to arrange childcare yet again. The amount of bouncing back and forth between blended learning and distance learning as we navigate the holiday and flu seasons will be detrimental to providing quality education to our students. I also ask you to consider this. If my AM cohort is at home quarantine and on distance learning because someone tested positive for COVID-19, this also affects my PM cohort. They too will have to quarantine at home, as I am a close contact with all of my students, regardless of their cohort placement. Again, imagine the amount of scrambling that will take place for this to happen on my part, as well as the parents. Please consider all of this on top of all the health concerns you have already heard from numerous teachers throughout our district. Thank you. The next one is from Tamara Washburn, first grade teacher at Mountain Meadows. Dear board members of Moorpark Unified School District, I am reaching out to you today about the waivers we have applied for in our district. I am concerned that we are jumping into the waiver process way before it is safe to return. I understand that parents are eager to have their children back in school, and the survey showed this information to be true. However, the other part of the survey showed that teachers and staff do not feel comfortable returning to in-class instruction. Every voice should be heard. At the last meeting, it appeared to be the parents' voices that were heard, but the teachers and staff concerns were not discussed and were almost dismissed. I want to make sure that all these voices are heard and that the information that we are making decisions on is accurate and understood. Teachers and staff know what it will look like when students return to hybrid learning. But I do not think that parents understand what the classroom learning will look like for their child. I think that if parents understood what the learning environment will look like for their child returning to a hybrid learning model, they would see that it would be like it is now, except that the student will be in a classroom socially distanced from their peers. There will still be no interactions, and teachers will be teaching behind masks and from the front of the room. This will be extremely difficult for the younger children. Children in the younger primary grades don't understand how to socially distance, nor should they understand. They are all about sharing and hugs and social interactions with their peers. To bring them back into the classroom setting where this can't take place for them is just not fair. The only difference I see in bringing children back into the classroom is that there will be more time spent socially distancing and hand washing and less time teaching. We have such limited time to teach as it is. Please consider the health and safety of all that are involved and not just part of the stakeholders. Teachers don't feel comfortable bringing in class teaching back. Maybe we should reach out to the teachers and staff and find out more about their concerns before we make a decision that will have an effect on everyone. Thank you for your time. And the last one is from Crystal Worth. Hello, my name is Crystal Worth. I am a lifelong resident of Moore Park. I attended MUSD schools and have a daughter who I recently pulled out of MUSD. I do not want to say that I am happy MUSD voted to implement the waiver. I know this decision wasn't easy, but I believe it is the right one. Distance learning is definitely taking a toll on the children, and I have not heard anything positive when speaking to friends or reading stories on social media of other families' experiences with it. I myself have noticed the negative effects and changes in my own daughter due to the remote learning, and it saddens me. We all have to get back to our lives sooner or later, and I know you are doing what's best for the students. This decision definitely makes me want to bring my daughter back to MUSD. Hang in there, and thank you again. And that was the last one.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone for reading those and for submitting them. On to item number 9, report from superintendent, small cohorts, specialized instruction update.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to give an update. On Monday, yesterday of this week, Moore Park Unified began in-person learning under the small cohort specialized instruction program that is permitted by the state and county for our most vulnerable students. In our district, we had 58 students come or be present for in-person services out of 79 students who are enrolled in preschool and elementary special day class. This represents 73% of our SDC students. Specifically, at Mountain Meadows, the Autism SDC program opened with our teacher, Miss Smith, who had 5 students, and Miss Rubalcaba, who had 11 students. Each class has 3 paras in the classroom. At Flory, the functional skills program opened with Miss Meza with 4 students, and Miss Canfield, 6 students. Each class has 2 paras. At Aurora West, the learning disabled SDC classroom opened with 9 students. Miss Smith's class has 2 paras supporting the in-person learning. At Peach Hill, the learning disabled SDC classrooms opened with Mrs. Duran, 5 students, and Mrs. Vega with 9 students. Also, each class has 2 paras. And finally, the Early Childhood Center opened SDC classrooms with Mrs. Morningred and 5 students, and Mrs. Randolph with 4 students. Each class has 2 paras. Of the 58 students, 17 of them are eligible for and receive transportation to and from school. And we had at the district office, our staff members went to the classrooms to observe, and it was nice to see the students back. So I just wanted to give an overview of the small cohorts, specialized program. They are opening up around the county because the state has determined that students who cannot be effectively reach their goals in the home setting, school districts should provide in-person learning when possible. So we, as a district, determined to do so for our SDC students, grades preschool through 5th grade.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Dr. Hayes?
Dr.
Yes.
Hayes, did we have any feedback from our teachers with regards to how the day went? PPE, were we short on any of that? How did it go?
We had the screening process was reported back to me from all the sites as being smooth. Our director of special ed, Lilia Syed, reported that the screening proceeded. The teachers had their PPE, and the students, were able to learn. The students did need to be reminded to socially distance at times, and they needed some help with masks. But the teachers felt that overall it was a good day. As of yesterday, I did not hear from today yet.
Great.
That was my question. So thank you for answering that.
Okay, anyone else have any other questions or comments?
I
Okay.
will say that I did receive a FaceTime call from my nephew who attends the Royal West, and he was just so excited. I saw the pictures of him getting dropped off and the welcome banner that welcomed him there. And I got a FaceTime call from him at the end of his when he got home, and his smile was just the biggest smile I've ever seen from him in a long time. So I think he had a good day yesterday. I didn't hear from him today, but I know yesterday he seemed very happy, and he even said, in the 2 hours and 45 minutes that I was out of the house, I had a great time. So he was happy about that. So just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you, and thank you for that feedback, Robert. Okay, moving on to item number 10, report from district board members. Mr. Donabedian?
Yeah, thank you. Really have add a lot from last week, but I want to thank Aurelie, Ute, Kelly, Donna, and Kathy for reading all those public comments. I'd also like to thank the board for allowing all voices to always be heard. I think that's something that I'm very proudful of, that we allow that time. I appreciate the many letters, emails, texts, and phone calls that I've received. It always helps to have as many perspectives on any subject. It gives food for thought as we move further down the road on this process. And just like I saw on the MEA website, what we're doing right now is a process, and nothing's etched in stone yet. I understand there's a lot of anxiety about everything COVID related. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I know that our teachers want to go back to school, but they want to do so safely. I get that they're not feeling safe and they feel they're being pushed into something they're not ready for. But I just want them to know, and the community to know, that we're doing the best that we can to follow the most up-to-date guidance. And we've been very patient and flexible in our response thus far. And I think we all expect that to continue. And we'll be following any changes very closely. And I know that Dr. Hayes and her team will continue to work with our teachers as this process unfolds. Other than that, just thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perez?
Yes, I also echo what board member Donabedian said. Thank you to the readers. You did a great job. It's not easy, but I do appreciate President Sweet for allowing all these letters to be read in their entirety. I know that, we're usually given 3 minutes, but that wasn't even brought up. And thank you for that. And I do appreciate all the teachers who reached out, our community members. It's great to hear from you. And of course, I did receive numerous emails and text messages this weekend and had some conversations with teachers who called me personally. And my ear fell out. I do want to express my condolences to the owner of the Cactus Patch, Luis Martinez, who passed away, and also Mary Schwabauer. My heart is with your family, and Mary Schwabauer was just an amazing individual. She, I met her when I first ran for the board in 2014. She was my mom's teacher, and I think many, Aurelie, probably your teacher, and many she was teacher to many, but I did get to sit with her for a few hours at the Cactus Patch, and she just, she just was just shared her history with me. And I love history, and she, shared about her husband being on the school board and when the school board unified, and I learned a lot from her. And I, I know she's resting now, and I do, again, express my condolences to the family. And of course, as I said, Luis, he made the best French toast. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you, Robert. Mr. Dottori?
Here, there we go. Actually, since we've only met a week ago, I really have nothing to report. Trustee Donabedian, I echo everything he said. I had this nice little speech kind of written out here, but I will just leave it with what Jeff expressed to our teachers and our parents, to all that. I give a double thumbs up to, and back 100%. We appreciate everyone's input. We always want everyone's input, and appreciate the time that you took to send that input. That's it.
Great, thank you. Ms. Van Dam?
Nothing to report since last week.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you for everyone who read the letters. Thank you for everyone that has submitted letters of the last couple of weeks while we went through this process. I know many of the teachers that submitted letters. I know many of the parents that submitted letters, and I know that we have teachers that are also parents of students in the district. And I know that in some of the letters and public comments, people spoke about they thought they knew that people were being selfish, or they impugn the motives of the people that were writing the letters. And believe me, knowing the parents and knowing the teachers that did this, I fully believe that the teachers are doing this because they feel it's what is best for their students, and that the parents are also writing these letters because they feel it's what's best for their families and their children. So, Mr. Donabedian, Mr. Perez, and myself all have children in the school district in MUSD that range everywhere from elementary to middle to high school. So believe me that this board takes these kind of decisions very seriously. And with that being said, we had people that were talking about that we should follow the science. And I fully believe that that's exactly what we're doing, because, Ventura County Public Health and Dr. Levin, they are the experts, and they're in public health. The state of California and their public health organization is also, they're the experts, and Dr. Levin decides the criteria that we're going to use, in Ventura County, whether it's wearing masks, dining indoors, going to church, or going to school. A few weeks back, or a month or so, Dr. Levin asked that schools, public and private, apply for a waiver that based on his professional opinion and on the science, that if we met their criteria and we and their standards, that he felt that it would be safe for us to go back to this blended learning model of in-person education. So we took the plan that we had already come up with for the blended learning model and submitted it to Dr. Levin for his approval or disapproval. Once he's done with it, it goes on to the state, where it's further scrutinized, and they look at it to see if it meets the standards that have been set forth. So, and then once they look at it and they determine whether or not it meets their standards, then they send it back to the county, and that way we have the county public health experts and the state public health experts determine whether or not the criteria and the standards that they've put in place, if we meet them, and allow us to go back to this blended in-person learning. So I fully believe that, that this transition to blended learning will not be problem-free. Going to distance learning was not problem-free in the beginning, but we overcame that. I know that our teachers, classified administrators, will overcome these obstacles with the support of our parents and students in order to ensure that our students get the best education possible. And I assure you that the Board of Education will continue to follow the recommendations of the experts at Ventura County Public Health and State Public Health to make sure that our students and teachers are as safe as possible. So thank you again for all your public comments. And with that, we'll move on to item number 11, which is board items for action discussion. don't think we have any here. So we'll move on to item number 12, consent action. Items proposed for the consent calendar are noted on the posted agenda and are considered by the superintendent to be of a routine nature. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of any board member and placed under the appropriate action category. A roll call vote will be taken for the consent calendar so that any items requiring a roll call vote can be properly addressed. It's recommended that all consent items be approved. Do we have anyone that wants to pull any items from the consent agenda? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a
I'm-
motion that we approve all consent items.
Okay,
second.
on the motion from Robert Perez, seconded by Ute Van Dam. O'Reilly, will you call the roll?
Yes, Scott DeTore,
Aye.
Jeff Donabedian,
Aye.
Robert Perez,
Aye.
Nathan Sweet,
Aye.
Ute Van Dam.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item number 18. It's recommended that the board approve the Moore Park Unified School District's Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, LCP. The LCP is a comprehensive plan that replaces the Local Control Accountability Plan, the LCAP, for the 2020-2021 school year. The LCP is a planning document that is intended to balance the needs of all stakeholders, including educators, parents, students, and community members, in the midst of the uncertainty caused by COVID-19. Staff presented detailed information regarding the plan to the public at the public hearing held on September 15th, 2020. Board approval is required. Dr. Hayes?
Yes, if you recall at our last board meeting last week, we had our director, Tammy Herzog, present a thorough report about this required plan that we have to do in lieu of the LCAP that must be approved this month. So we did have a public hearing. We did not receive any public comments on this item, and staff would recommend approval. And then we can go ahead and implement the items in the plan, including some of the CARES Act funding for COVID relief.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, on a motion from Scott DeTore, seconded by Jeff Donabedian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ayes have it, 5-0. Item number 19, it's recommended that the board approve the inclusion of the following new course at Moore Park High School. AP Art History, grades 11 and 12, semester course, 1 year, no prerequisite. This course is designed to be the equivalent of a 2-semester college course. This framework articulates big ideas and essential questions that encourage student investigation of art, and it contains clear learning objectives that represent the art historical skills valued by art historians and higher education faculty. Dr. Hayes.
Yes, we are excited to offer this course. For the past couple of years, our students have requested this course, and as you know, our teachers have to go, ideally, they get trained and certified to teach an AP course. They have a training program, and so we have the ability to offer this course, and it's just another example of listening to our students and our teachers, trying to provide our students with rigor and interesting courses that also prepare them for college. So staff enthusiastically recommends approval of this great course.
I will make a motion unless we have questions.
I have a quick question. When would the class start?
Well, we have started it now, actually. Ideally, with board approval, we'll go ahead and purchase actual materials. Right now, we're using online resources.
And how many students are in there? Do you know?
It's a full course, so I would say probably at least 30, but I'd have to get the exact number.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the inclusion of the new AP Art History course for grades 11 through 12 at Moore Park High School.
I'll second.
Who's
I
Nathan?
All
think
those in favor? Am I the
Yeah.
board president now? Oh,
Yeah, I think something happened to Nathan,
Mr.
probably.
Yeah, I think he got
his battery might have
yes.
died. We've been having a lot of technical difficulties this evening with our computers. There he is.
Vice President?
He's coming back.
Nathan's gonna sit at my desk on my computer to finish up.
Nathan, I was president for a second.
There you go. Thank you for stepping in.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
I don't know what happened. My computer suddenly
Okay.
crashed, so sorry
So
about
we have
that.
a
We've had a few
We have a
different
motion
technical
from me.
difficulties. Some of the issues that we have with this teleconference type meeting. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had him earlier.
So did we have a motion, Robert?
Yes, I motioned and Ute seconded.
Great. On a motion from Robert Perez, seconded by Ute Van Dam. Any discussion on the motion? Nothing. Thank you for everybody for always, our staff are constantly looking for different ways for more enrichment and high achieving, for our high achieving students. It's wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. District policies, none. Pending agenda items. Does anybody have any pending agenda items? Okay.
The only thing I would ask is, Dr. Hayes, if you could just continue to keep us posted on the numbers, where we stand on the percentage. I think we have to be under, is it 7 or under 7
We
for a
need to
certain
be,
amount of days?
yes, we need to be under 7, or 7 is our target, just under 7 right now. Today, the update was 7.4. So we're getting
We're almost
closer.
there.
Yes, we're getting closer.
Well, hopefully we stay on that track and continue to decline. But if you can just keep us posted, if Dr. Levin says that we're under 7 and we can move to the next step, whatever it is, just keep the board updated so that way we know. And then
Will
if we
do.
need to come back and have any special meetings, that would be great too.
For sure. I think last week we were at 7.8, this week 7.4, so we're getting there for sure. Moving in the right direction. Anyone else? Okay, the date and time of the next regular meeting. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Moore Park Unified School District will be held on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. in the district office boardroom, 5297 Maureen Lane, Moore Park, California. Please note that the meeting date and or time are subject to change pending updates to the governor's executive orders and to the Ventura County Public Health stay-at-home order. Okay, entertain a moment to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Second, third, fourth.
All right, and a motion by Ute Van Dam, second by Jeff Donabedian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, and time is 8:19. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
Moore Park.